Young miss, quickly come and take a look. When Yu Fu returned to the western wing, Yarrow Lan's group carried out a pile of things. The sight of this was quite dazzling. There were clothes, jewelry, and there was also silver and gold. This was rewarded by His Majesty. They said that it was New Year's money. His Majesty knows that young miss and the second young sir went to save the eldest young sir. I heard that he praised young miss quite a great deal. It was no wonder the rewards were so plentiful. So it was because of Jiyu Shubai's life. Yu Fu suddenly remembered something. Oh right, after second brother and I left, His Majesty didn't get mad, right? The matter of 500 cavalry members leaving the capital first before informing the emperor, it was natural that word of the event could not be contained. Immediately after young miss and the second young sir left, Lord Marquis went out and waited for the palace's gates to open for 2 hours. When Lord Marquis returned, he was weak, and I heard Steward Chi say that His Majesty wanted to dispatch a few imperial physicians to chase after your group. He should not have gotten mad. Yu Fu said, if His Majesty didn't get mad, does that mean that there was no word from the Board of War? 500 cavalry left the city without warning. This is something that should have been handled by the Board of War, and the officials in court can't have stayed quiet. Lian Bai said, there really wasn't. Didn't Lord Marquis give the second young sir his golden decree? That golden decree was meant to allow for the movement of troops without warning. It's just that Lord Marquis always kept a low profile and never made use of it. This was the first time that it had been used, so what could the Board of War say? Though she was just a maidservant, when Lian Bai brought up Jiyu Huijiang's merits, she was unable to conceal her pride. Yu Fu could not stop herself from laughing. I wasn't around to celebrate the new year and must have troubled you. Take this silver and gold and share it amongst yourselves. Those who work inside get 1 gold piece and those who work outside get 1 silver piece. As for these clothes, the clothes had been made based on her measurements, so Lian Bai and the others would be unable to wear them. Yu Fu turned her head to look at Yarrow Lan. She suddenly noticed that not even Yarrow Lan could wear her clothes, they were too big. She could not help but reach out to compare heights with Yarrow Lan. Yarrow Lan, I only left for half a month. Why is it that I suddenly found that you've gotten shorter? Yu Fu previously hated it when the topic of height was brought up, getting mad at anyone who brought it up. Now, it was Yarrow Lan. She shrank back and avoided Yu Fu's hand, her small face bright red. It's young miss who sneakily grew taller without telling me. What should I do now? Only I'm the shortest. Yin Ling and Yin Shui stood to the side and covered their mouths while laughing. Now, it was Lian Zhu's group that refused to accept this, and the group began laughing and messing around when they suddenly heard the sound of Auntie Li's footsteps. She walked in through the door. A maidservant with her head lowered followed her in. She was dressed plainly, and it was immediately clear that she had come from the countryside. Young miss, Yarrow Hong has returned. What arrangements for her did you have in mind? What? She was actually Yarrow Hong? Aside from Yu Fu, the smiles on everyone's faces turned to surprise, as they looked at her unkindly. As a maidservant who tried to harm her master, she actually had the face to come back. Qi Ting lifted her head and bowed toward everyone. With a natural smile, it looked as if nothing had happened. Greetings, young miss. Greetings, sisters. What did the head general have to say? Yu Fu picked up her cup of tea and asked this with composure. Though Yu Fu had taken the initiative to allow Qi Ting's return for Qian and Qi Ju, she also knew that the maidservants in her room did not like Qi Ting. What to do with her was truly a troubling problem. Aunt Li looked at Qi Ting. The head general said that if not for taking care of the young miss, the manor had no need for maidservants. That's why everything can be decided on by young miss. There's no need to go and ask the head general. This was to say that Yu Fu now had control over whether Qi Ting lived or died. She nodded. The rest of the manor indeed has no use for maidservants. How about this? Let's just have her continue to work in the western wing like before. Young miss. Since Aunt Li was present, Lian Zhu and Lian Bai had things that they wished to say but could not. They had no choice but to swallow their grievances. Yarrow Lan, however, was not at all afraid, directly asking, has young miss forgotten that she tried to frame you? Last time, her plan was too stupid, and Lord Marquis did not believe her. What if the next time, her plan is better and really does end up causing harm to young Miss? Yin Ling and Yin Shui nodded fervently to express their agreement with Yarrow Lan. Aunt Li had brought Qi Ting back because she had been ordered to do so. Her eyes were also telling Yu Fu that she did not hope for Qi Ting to remain in the Western Wing. Yu Fu looked at Qi Ting with a smile. Yarrow Lan said it, and you heard it. It would be better if you personally told her. Will you try and harm me again? Qi Ting immediately kneeled. This servant doesn't dare. In the past, this servant failed to recognize the greatness of someone else and always thought of myself as occupying the highest position. Now, this servant has realized the errors of my ways and no longer dare to do that sort of thing. She spoke sincerely, as Yarrow Lan bit her lip, having nearly believed her. Yu Fu looked around at everyone. Did you all hear that? Yarrow Hong has already changed. Aunt Li, take her to go and see Granny Liu. Have her living arrangements prepared first. Granny Liu? Qi Ting lifted her head in shock and looked at her. The Granny Liu who handles the physical labor in the courtyard? Why would my living arrangements be arranged by her? All of the living arrangements for maidservants who do physical labor are handled by Granny Liu. If you do not work hard, and Granny Liu is displeased, not even I can help you. Yu Fu called her Yarrow Hong and told her that she would be doing physical labor. Her attitude toward Qi Ting was completely different from before. In the past, she would call her sister Qi Ting as she did with Lian Zhu and Lian Bai. Yarrow Lan could not hold back her laughter. This one laugh caused Yin Ling and Yin Shui to also laugh. Their young miss really was smart, demoting Qi Ting from the top maidservant in the Western Wing to a maidservant who did physical labor. For such a haughty and proud person, would this not frustrate her to death? Seeing her humiliated expression and having been bullied by her in the past, Lian Zhu and Lian Bai felt quite delighted. Qi Ting could not stop herself from wanting to say something but was interrupted by Yu Fu. Auntie Li, I'll trouble you with taking her there. I will be going to see Head General since I have not yet properly wished him a Happy New Year. After saying this, she went out with Yarrow Lan. Qi Ting kneeled on the ground and turned her head to watch her leave. She suddenly had a feeling of unfamiliarity. The current Yu Fu has already grown from an innocent child into a budding beauty. Not only was her appearance becoming more astonishing, but the aura surrounding her was also starting to feel more and more like the one surrounding Jiyu Huijiang. She was imposing even without getting angry with a magnanimity that reached the clouds. She could not stop herself from biting her lip. Had she known sooner, she would have just stayed in the Prime Minister's manor where there was no need to worry about food or clothing. It was also more relaxing than cleaning up the courtyard, yet Yin Shaw insisted that she come back. Auntie Li, young miss said that everyone is to be given one piece. This is yours. Lian Zhu picked out the largest piece from the pile of gold and silver on the platter and stuffed it into Aunt Li's hands. Aunt Li smiled so widely that she could not stop smiling. Young miss has always been generous. It's just that giving a piece of gold to each person might be a little too much. Lian Bai said. Young miss said that only those who work inside are to be given gold. The maidservants and grannies who work outside will be given silver. This is a reward given for New Year's. Since Yarrow Hong had not yet returned at that time, there's no need to give her any. Auntie Li, what do you think? That is natural. One should only be able to receive this reward for working earnestly in the manor for a year. Yarrow Hong only came after the New Year, so it's natural that there's no need to give her any. Yarrow Hong kneeled on the ground and gritted her teeth. She had to listen to them withhold her silver but could not say anything. The current situation was not the same as it had been in the past. Marquis Gu's manor had an established hierarchy. As a maidservant who did physical labor, she could not argue with a higher-ranked maidservant like Lian Bai. Yarrow Lan followed Yu Fu to the main hall. Throughout the entirety of the trip, she spoke about Qi Ting's previous misdeeds. Finally, she happily said, in the end, young miss really is smart. Though she was brought back, she has been arranged to take care of menial labor. But why not just have her sent somewhere else? What other place is there? Is it the main hall, eldest brother's place, or maybe second or third brother's places? They don't have any other maidservants, so having an extra girl there would be inconvenient. She only wants to climb to a higher social status. If it was arranged for her to work in a young sir's courtyard, would that not be going along with her wishes? Yu Fu suddenly came to a stop and mockingly laughed. I'm not worried about going along with her wishes. Rather, I'm worried that she would steal some of the manor's secrets while at my older brother's sides and cause a great deal of trouble. You guys will need to keep a close eye on her. While you're at it, tell Auntie Lee to let her regain her original name. Yarolan said with displeasure. A lowly servant like her wants to use her original name? What is young miss doing being so kind to her? I'm not being kind to her. Instead, I feel that she is not worthy of sharing the same name as you. Lord Marquis, young Miss Yu Fu has come. Qian personally entered to report this, a smile on his face. Who knew whether it was from the festive feeling of New Year's or if it was because cheating had returned. Jiyu Huijiang and Jiyu Shubai were in the middle of a conversation. Hearing that Yu Fu had arrived, they quickly cut their conversation short. Upon entering the room, Yu Fu saw Jiyu Shubai, eldest brother, is also here. Have you also come to wish Head General a Happy New Year? That's right. Jiyu Yi and the others have already come and done so. Why have you only come just now? Yu Fu glanced at Qian. Auntie Lee brought Cheating back, so I needed to make arrangements for her. That's why I came a little later. Head General, Happy New Year. She respectfully kneeled and performed a salute to wish the older generation a Happy New Year, and Jiyu Huijiang quickly gave Yarolan a look to help her up. Yes, Happy New Year, come. Jiyu Huijiang happily gestured for her to step forward and pulled out a large red pouch. It's New Year's money. Yu Fu received the pouch and looked at Jiyu Shubai. Is this something that only I am getting, or are all of my older brothers getting some? Jiyu Shubai said, your second brother, third brother, and I aren't getting any. Fourth brother and the younger ones got it. But the contents are all different. Take a look inside and see. Yu Fu opened the pouch and found that it did not contain things like gold, silver, or precious gems. Instead, it was a thick piece of brown paper. Could it just be a banknote? Taking it out, she found that it was much larger than a banknote, and there was the image of a room drawn on it. She said in shock, this is a deed to a house. Head General, are you giving me a house as New Year's money? Jiyu Huijiang found her reaction to be quite entertaining. That's right. This courtyard is next to West Lake and has a total of 5 divisions. It's neither large nor small and is very tasteful. You like West Lake, so you can go there for short trips when you have the time. When Yu Fu married Jiyu Shubai in the future, it would not do to have the bridal sedan set out from Marquis Gu's manor then turn around and go straight back inside, right? He had to provide Yu Fu with a place that could be considered her own. Yu Fu did not understand his intentions and only thought about the 5-division courtyard. He said that was neither too big nor too small. She clicked her tongue. I thought that the things given by His Majesty were already generous enough. Who knew that Head General would be even more generous? Then what did fourth brother and the others get? If everyone was given a courtyard, Marquis Gu's manor might be a little too wealthy. Jiyu Huijiang said, oh, they got 50 taels of silver each. Yu Fu, it was not even as much as what she gave her maidservants. Sure enough, sons were raised strictly. Right, Head General, have any clues been found about the assassins that tried to kill eldest brother's group? Jiyu Huijiang and Jiyu Shubai exchanged a look. In truth, before Yu Fu entered, they were discussing this exact topic. It was fine. There was no need to hide this matter from Yu Fu. Jiyu Huijiang said to Qian, you are all dismissed for now. Qian waved and led all of the servants out of the room, leaving father, son, and daughter alone in the room. Given the situation, it was clear that Jiyu Huijiang had indeed discovered something. After the incident occurred, not only did His Majesty not assign any blame for mobilizing troops without permission. On the contrary, he fully supported the investigation. With Yang Zheng having been poisoned, the first group that I suspected was the special envoy from Western Kuan, but all of their people are registered. It's impossible for them to bring out an extra 100 people to attack Shubai's group. Yu Fu said, while we were in Changju, eldest brother also said this. Since it's not Western Kuan's special envoy, who else could it be? Jiyu Huaijiang sighed. The Board of War does not dare interfere with the mobilization of troops, and that was within my expectations. But there was one person who, even if there's nothing on me, still suspects me a great deal. This time, when there was something that could be used against me, he did not say anything. This obviously made me suspicious. In court, the only one who would dare to suspect Jiyu Huaijiang and could interfere would be the Prime Minister, Yin Yang. All three fell silent for a while. Even Yu Fu knew that the discord between Eastern Ling's general and prime minister had always worried Jiyu Huaijiang. He had even made many attempts to get closer with Yin Yang, however, he was always treated coldly. Jiyu Huaijiang said, "Don't look at how Prime Minister Yin is perceived negatively in court. His talent as the prime minister is not something that can be ignored. It's fortunate that Eastern Ling has had him managing the situation in court over the years. It's thanks to him that I can fight on the front lines without worrying about problems in the future. If it's uncovered that it really was he who tried to poison Shu Bai, who would profit the most from the discord between the general and the prime minister?" The group from Western Kuan was still in the capital. If they were allowed to see the discord between Eastern Ling's general and prime minister, the citizens living near the border would need to worry once more. Jiyu Shubai also said, "After all, I am fine. If the situation in court becomes unstable because of me alone, I will feel quite bad about it. It would be best if we don't bring this subject up any further." One understood very clearly that his favorite son nearly died but would need to compromise for the sake of maintaining the court stability. The other nearly lost his life but needed to stay silent to protect the people who tried to kill him. If she had not heard it herself, Yu Fu would be unable to believe just how magnanimous the father and son of the Jiyu family were. Yu Fu said, "The people of Marquis Gu's manor were born for the sake of family and country and die for the sake of family and country. You never even give your lives a second thought. I really admire that, but with this matter getting talked about so much, just because you don't want to investigate it does not mean that it won't be investigated." For the sake of Jiyu Shubai, not only was Emperor Ning tolerant of the cavalry leaving the city, but he had also anxiously sent imperial physicians. He also gave a large reward. In his eyes, Jiyu Shubai was the most valuable descendant in Eastern Ling. He was also the ideal son-in-law. How could he possibly give up on the investigation? A bang came from inside the study of the Prime Minister's manor. The sound was muffled but heavy. It sounded as if a fist had landed on a sturdy desk, and the guards outside exchanged a glance. It had already been an hour since the eldest young sir had gone in, and his expression had been very ugly when he entered. Now, he must be beside himself with anger. In the end, they pretended not to hear to avoid going in and being a bother. Kuan Wushong, that damn Kuan Wushong. Yin Shuo sat in the darkness behind the desk. He did not open a window, nor did he light a candle. In the evening mist, his visage that was as fine as jade became twisted. There was a brocade box placed on the desk. On the day that he had asked Kuan Wushong about Yu Fu's identity, Kuan Wushong became angry and left, telling him to visit the post house when he had thought of how he would like to be repaid. A few days after that, Yin Shuo sent someone over, and the person returned with this brocade box. Kuan Wushong said that it contained a deadly poison. It was a poison that even Yu Fu might not be able to treat. By the time that she figured out how to treat it, the victim would have already died. But why was Jiyu Shubai able to return safely? The informant stationed near Marquis Gu's manor reported that he looked fine, and there was not the slightest sign of illness. What nonsense about deadliness! What nonsense about a poison that Yu Fu can't treat! Kuan Wushong had clearly schemed against him, but he could not figure it out. Why? Did Kuan Wushong not want Jiyu Shubai to die? "Lord Prime Minister, you've returned." The voice of the guard outside quickly brought Yin Shuo back to the present. Immediately following this was Yin Yang's voice. "Is it the eldest young sir inside the study?" "Yes, the eldest young sir has been here for a while." Yin Yang walked through the door and furrowed his brow. The inside of the study was dark. Not a single candle had been lit. This was not at all like Yin Shuo's usual style. After waiting for a moment, A figure stood up from behind the desk, as Yin Shuo came forward to greet him. "Father." His voice contained a disappointment that he had never heard before. Yin Yang's eyes were sharp, looking him over quickly. Behind them, a servant came in, lit a candle, bowed, then exited. "What happened to make you so inattentive?" Yin Shuo bowed, then kneeled on the ground. "Father, son was schemed against by Kuan Wushong, and I fear that I have invited disaster upon our Prime Minister's manor." "What?" Yin Yang waved his broad sleeve and sat down behind the desk. "What exactly happened? Tell me in detail." Yin Shuo took a deep breath to settle himself down a little more. "The assassins that tried to kill Jiyu Shubai were sent out by Sun. I received a poison from Kuan Wushong's side. I originally thought that I could take his life in a single strike, but who knew that Jiyu Juji would take Yu Fu and set out so quickly, then manage to save him?" "Fool, who told you to assassinate Jiyu Shubai?" Yin Yang slammed the table and stood up. This matter was even brought up in court, and father was wondering who would be so bold. Who knew that it would actually be you? Why did you hide it from father and try to assassinate Jiyu Shubai without permission? Father has always despised Jiyu Huijiang for amassing troops to improve his own position and suspected him of being in cahoots with Western Kuan. This time, Jiyu Shubai only brought 40 people to escort the Su family's mother and daughter back to Jinling, so what better opportunity? Yin Yang looked at him sideways. Father's suspicions of Jiyu Huijiang are genuine, and the hatred is real too. However, father wishes to find evidence to cause his downfall in court. There is no desire to have him killed secretly. Also, it would be one thing if you had tried to kill Jiyu Huijiang, but why go after Jiyu Shubai? Father told you to investigate Yu Fu's identity. Rather than devote your efforts to important matters, you did something so sinister. Father is beyond disappointed in you. He only had one son in Yin Shuo, and he had always thought highly of him. This was the first time that he had scolded him so fiercely. Yin Shuo knew that he had done something wrong and could not argue. But he was not wrong for trying to kill Jiyu Shubai, he was wrong for trusting Kuan Wushong. Yin Yang continued, "Do you know just how much importance His Majesty has attached to this case? He has already ordered the Imperial Court of Justice to investigate this case. Once any connection to the Prime Minister's manor has been found, not even father will be able to protect you. Also, how could you be so negligent as to believe Kuan Wushong?" Yin Shuo was feeling a great deal of regret over this and hated that he could not skin him in his sleep. Kuan Wushong does not like the engagement between Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu, and he detests Jiyu Shubai. Moreover, Sun did not fully trust him. All 100 of the assassins that were sent out were top-tier experts. Who knew that Jiyu Huijiang, who usually kept a low profile, would send out 500 troop. If this was a battlefield, 500 soldiers would not be considered much, but in a peaceful country, 500 could be considered a big deal. Jiyu Huijiang really cared a great deal about his eldest son. Yin Yang sighed and helped him up from the ground. "Sit down to speak. Blaming you now is pointless. It would be better to quickly think of a way to distance yourself from this matter." Yin Shuo shook his head. If he could cleanly distance himself from this matter, there would be no need for him to be so troubled. "Father, if Kuan Wushong wished to use this matter to harm Sun, I fear that he would disclose the matter of this box of poison to His Majesty on his own. How could he dare? As a prince from Western Kuan, he ought to want to try and curry favor with our Prime Minister's manor, so how could he turn around and decide to drag you down instead?" A cold feeling crept up from his feet. Yin Shuo had always thought of himself as smart, but this time, he had to admit that he had grossly underestimated his enemy. It was possible that he was mistaken from the very beginning, and Kuan Wushong never wanted to use him to deal with Marquis Gu's manor. That seemingly frivolous and idle prince had a heart that was like inky water. It made it hard for people to see his true intentions. There's nothing uncertain about it. This prince suddenly did not want Jiyu Shubai to die. That's all. In the posthouse inner courtyard, Kai Gan anxiously entered Kuan Wushong's room. Kuan Wushong casually gestured and had Kai Gan sit where he was pointing. He then ordered an attendant to bring his medicine kit over. This medicine kit was very similar to the one that Yu Fu had. Even the jars and bottles inside were very similar. The kit was quite full, and Kuan Wushong usually took very good care of these things. Kaigan sat down below and anxiously furrowed his brow. It was such a good chance to kill off Marquis Gu's heir, so why did 7th Prince suddenly no longer want him to die? Were you not unhappy about his engagement to your little senior disciple? Just how much effort did Western Kuan's soldiers expend at the border, and how much fighting power had been lost, yet they had never been able to do anything to harm the members of Marquis Gu's manor in any way. The previous time, they finally managed to poison Jiyu Huijiang with Kunlun snow, and they were satisfied with that success. However, he was saved by Yu Fu. Western Kuan's many years of planning were ruined in just an instant. This time, they had a chance to kill Jiyu Shubai, yet Kuan Wushong tossed it aside. Kaigan was so angry that he could not even eat, much less sleep well. Kuan Wushong, however, continued to act carefree. The anger made his liver hurt. Kuan Wushong shot a glare at him. This prince wishes to call her little senior disciple, but that does not mean that I wish to hear others refer to her like this. You should just call her young Miss Yu Fu. Also, it's not like I refused to allow Jiyu Shubai to die. It's that Yin Shuo was too useless. I can't be blamed. He pulled out a thin porcelain bottle from his medicine kit. This is a secret poison based on a young plant, and there are no records of it even in Immortals Valley. It's possible that not even Yu Fu knows what sort of poison it is. It's not as poisonous as a Upus, but it's no less toxic than Kunlun snow. Speaking truthfully, I really don't know if Yu Fu knows how to deal with this poison. Kaigan slapped his thigh, and you couldn't give him a poison that can't be treated. If Jiyu Shubai died by my poison, and the plot was exposed, not to mention Emperor Ning refusing to forgive me, but even Yu Fu would refuse to forgive me. She is Master's most beloved disciple. I believe there's no need to tell you just how important Master is. Kaigan helplessly sighed but continued to brood over Jiyu Shubai's situation. If he could not be beaten to death, it would also be fine if he lost an arm or a leg. That would have the effect of reducing the strength of the Jiyu family's army. Kuan Wushong continued, initially, I thought of leaving the matter of whether Jiyu Shubai lived or died to fortune, but who knew that Yin Shuo would be so useless? He sent out 100 assassins but could not kill a severely poisoned Jiyu Shubai. What a joke. Kaigan thought to himself, you're just talking without putting in any work. 500 members of the Jiyu family army were mobilized. Is that something 100 assassins can fight against? Kuan Wushong casually glanced at him from the corner of his eye. You aren't speaking. Are you internally cursing this prince right now? I don't dare, I don't dare. This lowly official does not dare. Kaigan lifted his hand and wiped away some sweat from his brow. This lowly official was just thinking that since your poison didn't work, eldest young Sir Yin definitely will not let this matter slide. I fear that not only will he refuse to collaborate with us in dealing with Marquis Gu's manor, but he will actually work against you. Working against you would be no big deal, but it would be bad if those who did not know about the situation were implicated. Kuan Wushong nodded, that's right. I've also thought of this. That's why we need to act first and take the initiative before he moves against me. How should we take the initiative first? Send this bottle of poison to Emperor Ning and tell Emperor Ning about Yin Shuo asking me for this bottle of poison. Won't this grand case be solved just like that? Kaigan let out a heavy sigh. 7th Prince, have you gone crazy? You were the one who gave away this poison. How does putting this out there to hurt young Sir Yin help you? Prime Minister Yin absolutely will not let you off. The special envoy would also be in danger. Kuan Wushong sorted through his medicine kit. Suddenly noticing a small white bottle, he pulled it out and laughed hollowly. Lord Kaigan, take a guess at what this medicine is. Kaigan subconsciously leaped up and took a few steps back. During the New Year celebrations, Eastern Ling's courts were on vacation. Neither Emperor Ning nor the hundreds of officials discussed official matters. As a result, the special envoy had nobody to ask about the situation and found themselves extremely bored. Kuan Wushong was the one who had the hardest time sitting still. When he was bored, he would use the special envoy to test his poisons, and Kaigan had already become terrified from his messing about. There's no need to be nervous. In truth, there's no poison in my bag that Yu Fu can't treat. If your life is in danger, we can go and look for Yu Fu. Even if she clearly knows that you're a special envoy from Western Kuan with bad intentions, she will not just let you die. A thought seemed to have come to Kai Gan, then saying it like this, young Miss Yu Fu is a benevolent person? Kuan Wushong was very delighted, naturally. But the more benevolent a person is, the easier they are to deal with. I would rather deal with a kind person than a vile person like Yin Shuo. Kai Gan found this to be quite reasonable and quickly regained his composure. That's not right. Whether eldest young Sir Yin is a benevolent person or a vile person, what does that matter to us? The one that we must deal with is Marquis Gu's manor. The people in the Prime Minister's manor are of no threat to us. Who said that they aren't a threat? Thinking back to the way that Yin Shuo looked at Yu Fu, he felt totally uncomfortable. Compared to the discomfort that Jiyu Shubai made him feel, this was even more uncomfortable. Kuan Wushong snorted with contempt. He might not be a threat to Western Kuan, but he is a great threat to this prince. I absolutely must get rid of that person. In the dead of night, a shadow flickered in Emperor Ning's bedchamber. What is so important that you had to come and see us in the middle of the night just after the New Year? He was wearing a set of bright yellow nightclothes, and his imperial hat had also been removed, revealing his mottled silver hair. Eunuch Gao came out behind him and waved for the palace maids to leave when Emperor Ning sat down. This group of court officials had suddenly come to see him late at night during the resting period just after the New Year. There had to be something urgent that they wished for him to hear. Emperor Ning sat behind the imperial desk and looked up at them. He suddenly felt that the group of people standing there were very familiar and that he had seen them just a few days earlier. Ji Daogong, Pei Zhang, Lin Yi. Ji Daogong was an imperial censor from the censorate. It was his job to investigate every angle and determine whether or not someone was guilty. Pei Zhang was an official from the Imperial Court of Justice. He was responsible for adjudicating cases and handing out punishments. Lin Yi was a lower-ranked official from the Imperial Court of Justice and was his assistant. Why had they come together? Emperor Ning waved his hand and gestured for them to sit before speaking. For 2 second-rank officials and a third-rank official to come and visit so late at night, it must not be a trivial matter. Eunuch Gao quickly gave the other servants a look to bring out some tea. As Emperor Ning looked at Pei Zheng, we handed over the matter of investigating what happened to Marquis Gu's heir to the Imperial Court of Justice. Your Imperial Court of Justice has many talented people, so were there some findings? Pei Zhang stood up and cupped his hands, saying, "This subject came so late at night because of this matter. Your Majesty, the investigation was conducted by official Lin, and he found some clues. However, these clues involve an official of a higher rank. The two of us did not dare to continue investigating without permission. Since accusing a court official of misconduct is handled by the censorate, this official acted presumptuously and also invited Lord Ji Daogong was the top official in the censorate. He was over 60 years of age and was a senior official in court with a great deal of prestige. It was because he had this prestige that he rarely spoke out when he lacked any conclusive evidence of misconduct. Since Pei Zhang was able to convince him, it was natural that there was some semblance of evidence. Emperor Ning looked at Lin Yi. "Official Lin, please tell. What have you found?" Lin Yi stood up and reported, "Replying to your Majesty, the matter of Marquis Gu's heir being attacked happened during the latter half of the 12th month. At that time, the various agencies in the palace were preparing to shut down and start the break. Normally speaking, the various manors should not be making any big moves aside from preparing special items for New Year's celebrations. However, this lowly subject noticed that the Prime Minister's manor had mobilized a large number of people. The Prime Minister's manor? Emperor Ning furrowed his brow. What was the Prime Minister's manor mobilizing a large number of people for? This scale, just how large is it? Lin Yi said, "Lord Marquis Jiyu has always kept a low profile and very rarely dispatches a large number of troops. Even when sending the mother and daughter of the Su family back to Jinling, he only sent 40 people. To deal with these 40 from the Jiyu family's army, One would need at least twice as many experts to have a chance of victory. The Prime Minister's manor mobilized more than 3 times as many. In the report sent by Prefect Quan Ji Yang, the number of assassins at the bottom of the cliff match perfectly. 3 times as many, which meant there were over 100 people. For something as important as escorting ladies, Marquis Gu's manor only dispatched 40 people. What did the Prime Minister's manor need to dispatch over 100 people for? He had never heard Yin Yang bring it up before. It could not be that over 100 people were sent to buy New Year's specials, right? After a moment of silence, Emperor Ning ran his fingers through his beard. This matter involves the current Prime Minister. Clumsiness cannot be tolerated. If it's just a coincidence that the numbers lined up, it can't be certain that it was done by Prime Minister Yin, right? Lin Yi hastily said, that is indeed the case, but Prime Minister Yin is a standard first-rank official, thus this subject has no right to investigate him for this case and can only report this to your Majesty. This was to say that they currently suspected the Prime Minister's manner but could not be certain. Emperor Ning's expression improved a bit and finally turned toward Ji Daogong. It's because of this suspicion that Lord Ji was invited over so late at night. You two of the younger generation acted a little too improperly. Ji Daogong held the back of his chair and stood up, his back slightly hunched. There's no need for your Majesty to assign any blame on the two. It was this old subject who had something to take care of. This matter is closely related to the matter what they brought up. That's why I came along with them. This old subject wishes to report Prime Minister Yin for misconduct. He secretly communicated with the special envoy from Western Kuan to try and bring harm to our Eastern Ling. Clatter. Emperor Ning's hand swayed, and the lid on the blue and white teacup shook, nearly falling to the ground. He quickly reached out to steady it and cover up his loss of control. Secret communications with Western Kuan's special envoy? This matter, how did the elder official find out about it? Ji Daogong looked at Lin Yin, and the latter slightly nodded, thus he reported, replying to your Majesty, in truth, when Marquis Gu's heir was attacked, the first one that this subject suspected was the group from Western Kuan. The Jiyu family's army has been stationed at the border and defended Eastern Ling's territory. If not for the presence of the Jiyu family's army, Western Kuan might have already invaded our country and disturbed our citizens. That's why this subject sent someone to the post house to keep an eye on the special envoy. There, I found that they did not have the manpower for such a mobilization, but there was an unexpected discovery. This subject's subordinates heard that the poison used on Marquis Gu's heir was a poison that only Western Kuan has. Manpower from the Prime Minister's manor and poison from Western Kuan's special envoy, the two were brought together to try and kill Jiyu Shubai. From that, the fact that the two of them had communicated in secret was discovered. Now, things had come together. Ji Daogong continued, the reason that the investigation could not continue is the same as with the Imperial Court of Justice. Prime Minister Yin is a standard first-rank official who has a higher rank than this subject, and Western Kuan's special envoy has a unique status. Since both sides have influential positions, this subject could not bring it up in court lightly and could only come to report to your Majesty late at night. Emperor Ning fully understood their intentions. It seems that this matter will require us to bring in Prime Minister Yin and the special envoy from Western Kuan to reveal what happened. The three reached a tacit agreement and cupped their hands in salute. We ask your Majesty to graciously grant this request. The next day was the 15th of the first month, the day of the Lantern Festival. Court had not yet been reopened, and the officials were still on their rest period. The various families and manors were hanging up lanterns of various colors. When night came and the candles were lit, they would look even more beautiful than they did during the day. Yin Jiaro led a group of people on a walk through the manor and dully said, this year's lanterns are old. They're the same as the ones from last year? Could it be that our Prime Minister's manor doesn't even have the money to buy lanterns? The Prime Minister's manor was a prominent family with many businesses. It was natural that they were not lacking money to buy lanterns, so these words were clearly putting the blame on the servants for not handling matters properly. The steward who was directing the hanging of lanterns stepped forward and gave an uneasy salute. Young miss might not know, but new lanterns should have been purchased, but the eldest young sir has not had any free time recently to manage the manor's affairs and ordered us to keep things simple. That's why we brought out the same lanterns that were used last year. The Prime Minister's manor did not have a female master, and Yin Yang was busy with work. In the past, all of the manor's affairs had been handled by Yin Shuo. For some reason, Yin Shuo had spent the past few days hiding unhappily in the outer study. He also could not be bothered to handle the manor's affairs, and no matter what was asked, he would say that simple is best. If he was asked again, he would get irritated. After this happened a few times, the servants no longer dared to bother him. The steward continued, "If young miss does not like these old lanterns, you can go and speak with the eldest young sir. As long as he approves, we can immediately go out to buy new lanterns." Despite clearly knowing that Yin Shuo was in a bad mood, this steward still wanted her to go and have a stroke of bad luck. Was he trying to cause her harm? Yin Jiao rolled her eyes at him and no longer had any desire to look at the lanterns. She just led her maidservants and grannies back to her courtyard. Behind her, the steward gently shook his head with a faint but mocking smile on his face. "Quickly hang them up. They need to be hung up all over the manor, and they need to be up before it gets dark." During this rare rest period, Yin Yang was not holed up in the outer study, nor was he resting in the main study. Instead, he went alone to the ancestral hall. The Prime Minister's manor was not as prosperous as Marquis Gu's manor, and there were not as many tablets. The tablet at the front belonged to his first wife, Yang Shi, and the ones behind that belonged to the ancestors of the Yin family. Yin Yang's generation only had one son, and who knew that in Yin Shuo would also be the only son of his generation. There was also Yin Jiao who could barely help cover up the feeling of regret. Eastern Ling's Yin family has loyally served the ruler for 4 generations. This lowly Yin Yang was among them. "Despite being cautious and conscientious for half my life, I could not return the Yin family to the glory of my ancestors' time." Jiyu Huijiang amassed a large army to grow his influence. As a military commander, his prestige is greater than that of the courts. The people of Eastern Lin only recognize the great marquis and general but not the prime minister. It might not be long before they even forget their ruler. As he reached the end, his voice grew quieter and quieter. Picking up 3 sticks of incense, he kneeled on the prayer mat and respectfully bowed 3 times, then placed the incense before the spirit tablets. This unfilial descendant, Yin Yang, was powerless and could not stop Jiyu Huijiang from gaining the power to completely overpower the court. "Since I have one son in Yin Shuo, I may as well hand down the things that I could not accomplish to him, Master." Out in the courtyard, a gatekeeper hastily rushed over. Standing outside the ancestral hall, they bowed and saluted. "What's the need for such haste?" "His Majesty has given a decree ordering Master to enter the palace without fail." That pair of eyes that were as sharp as a hawk's had become muddy and aged at some point. Yin Yang closed his eyes, and who knew what he was thinking? After a long moment, he slowly stood up and straightened out his purple and gold hat. "Prepare the carriage. We will be going into the palace immediately." The Jiyu family's daughter has grown up, Part 2. This was the first time that Yu Fu had celebrated the New Year in Eastern Ling, and she found the manor's traditions to be quite novel. For example, first thing in the morning, the Western Wing's yard became quite rowdy. Draping some clothes over her shoulder, she went to the window to take a look. Yarrow Lan and the younger maidservants like Yin Ling had climbed up some ladders to hang lanterns. A row of lanterns with various shapes was already hanging in the corridor. The white ones were of the jade hare, and the orange ones were of golden carp. Yarrow Lan was holding a pink lantern shaped like a lotus flower that was both round and flat. She needed to hold it with both hands to keep it steady. Because she was afraid of heights, she held the lantern with one hand and the ladder with the other. No matter what she did, she could not hang it up properly. "You can't do it. Let me do it." Yin Ling was not afraid of anything. Standing below, she anxiously shifted around and wanted to help Yarrow Lan hang up the lantern. Yarrow Lan refused. "No, isn't it just one lantern? I absolutely will hang it up." Yu Fu shouted out through the window, "Yarrow Lan is afraid of heights. Don't have her hang up lanterns anymore. Yarrow Lan, quickly come back and help me look for my clothes. Where did you put the newly made skirt?" "Ha, I'm on my way. Yarolan complied and hugged the ladder while climbing down. So it turned out that she was afraid of heights. It was no wonder she had not hung up a single lantern. Yinling mischievously looked at Yin Shui, and the two reached a tacit agreement, reaching out to shake Yarolan's ladder. Hey, don't mess around. I'm going to fall. Help. Aunt Li just happened to be entering the courtyard. Instead of taking care of helping the young miss get cleaned up, you're playing around out here. If Yarolan falls to the ground, will you two take care of her work? The two quickly stopped what they were doing, and Yinling stuck out her tongue. Yarolan jumped down from the wooden ladder and handed the lotus flower lantern to Yinling. Auntie Li, we're just playing around. Don't blame them. After saying this, she ran toward the room to look for Yu Fu's new clothes. Beneath a small pine tree in the yard, Qi Ting was hanging up a lantern and snuck a look. She wanted to see what Aunt Li would do. Aunt Li had always been strict when directing the servants, male or female. She definitely would not let Yinling and Yin Shui off lightly. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Aunt Li walk over to the two and lift her hand. A look of surprise appeared in Qi Ting's eyes, and she turned her head to look over. With a bit of a smirk, she waited to watch the play unfold. Aunt Li's hand moved above Yinling's head and gently removed a small scrap of paper. Some lanterns will have bits of scrap fall off. After you finish hanging up the lanterns, remember to dust yourselves off. Don't mess up the young miss' new clothes. Yinling and Yin Shui cheerfully complied. We understand, Auntie Li. Qi Ting squinted her eyes in disappointment. The western wing had become a monolith, and it was impossible to find even the slightest crack. Even the usually strict Aunt Li was giving her unspoken consent to these maidservants who were messing around. This left her with no chance to act. Nearly everyone in the courtyard was on guard against her. Even when she ran to Qian, her grandfather who doted on her the most, and cried, Qian refused to place her back in the position of taking care of Yu Fu. You should already be thankful to the young miss that you can work in the western wing again, yet you still won't know when you be satisfied. The young miss is respectful toward the manner's seniors. If I personally went to ask, she might agree. But masters are masters, and servants are servants. Where are there any servants who would use their age to force their masters to do something? On the contrary, Qian gave her a scolding, which left her without any support. Qi Ting, you were told to hang up some lanterns, so why is it that after half a day, you've only managed to hang up a few? Granny Liu walked up from behind her and looked at her with displeasure. Look for yourself, even though the girls that work in the young miss room are messing around, they've hung up more than you have. Since you are a maidservant who does physical tasks, don't bother trying to flaunt your position as a higher-ranked maidservant. If you can't do this properly, I will definitely make sure to punish you. After saying this, she gave her a warning look, then turned around and went to supervise the other maidservants. Young miss, have you noticed that the new clothes have a different style than the old clothes? Yu Fu wore her newly made red brocade dress and stood before the large bronze mirror. Unable to hold back, she did a spin. The pleated sapphire blue hem smoothed out and formed a circle when she did her spin. The flowing sleeves of her red top fluttered like a butterfly's wings. Although they were winter clothes, they were not as excessively thick as her previous clothes. Yu Fu was also short, thus they made her look even more like a ball. She had recently grown taller. Her figure was slender, and her waist was thin. If she continued to wear those sorts of clothes, it would no longer look good. In the end, it would be a dress that would show off her figure the best. Lian Zhu walked in from the outer room. The tailor who made the clothes is great at knowing what suits people the best. Once young miss new measurements were sent over, they immediately knew what sort of clothes would suit young miss the best. Unable to hold back a smile, she continued, everyone says that people who are born beautiful will definitely end up growing improperly. As I see it, our young miss has grown 1 year older but has become even more beautiful. Lian Bai laughed at her. Young miss has grown up. You should learn a few new hairstyles. You can't keep giving our young miss childish hairstyles. Yu Fu felt the pearl hairpin in her hair. Every time that Sister Lian Zhu does my hair, it always ends up matching my clothes very well. This hairpin is simple and graceful. Where is the jeweled chain that was used when brushing my hair? Is young miss talking about the jeweled chain that had the flower buds? These sorts of items that were related to makeup were always handled by Lian Zhu. She pulled out a drawer to the left. The place that should have contained the jeweled chain was empty. She was shocked. It's always been in here. How could it have disappeared? It must be the sixth young sir who hid it. The sixth young sir has hidden away plenty of things that young miss used before. Everyone laughed upon hearing this. The jacket that young miss was wearing when you first entered the manor still hasn't been brought back even now. We will need to go and find Xiao Mutu and get back all of young miss things tomorrow. Mention Cao Cao, and Cao Cao will come. Ji Yu Xiong and Ji Yu Yi walked in from the outside. Hearing Xiao Mutu's name, they knew that they were being talked about. What sort of bad things are you saying about us? Yu Fu turned her head to look. Today, the two of them were also wearing new clothes. They were both wearing the same style of robe. It was just that one was a dark blue that matched Ji Yu Xiong's steadiness. The other was a sky blue that perfectly fit Ji Yu Yi's liveliness. Lian Zhu pointed at the empty drawer. This, sixth young sir, the jeweled chain that young miss used to use when brushing her hair, was it you who moved it? Ji Yu Yi coughed into his fist. Famich, nonsense. Do you have any proof? Just look at how guilty he looked. Ji Yu Xiong shook his head and let out a sigh. You are already engaged. Can't you be a little more mature? If Yu Fu was a mature girl, and you stole her things, Yun Yang would definitely get angry. It's fortunate that Yu Fu, Ji Yu Xiong turned to look at her. He suddenly could not say the words that were about to be spoken. The Yu Fu that he had always viewed as a child had grown up to his shoulders in the blink of an eye. She was no longer just a small child. The red dress that she wore was very fitting, and her charming face had lost some of its baby fat. Her chin was slowly starting to become more noticeable. She was clearly a budding beauty. She was a beauty who would attract the attention of countless young men if she went out. She was only 13 years old. It was truly hard to imagine just how beautiful she would be by the time she turned 15. It was no wonder Jiyu Huijiang was so anxious, bringing up the matter of engagement during his birthday banquet and having Yu Fu enter the ancestral hall. Sure enough, he had great foresight. If they did not decide on the engagement early, by the time that Yu Fu became of age, would Marquis Gu's Manor's dorsal not be completely flattened by people wanting her hand in marriage? Fifth brother, why have you been looking at me for such a long time? Didn't we agree to go out and look at the lanterns today? Yu Fu smiled and did a spin. Look, I'm already dressed, so we can set out. Ji Yu Xiong and Ji Yu Yi's eyes spun with her, and Ji Yu Yi unconsciously swallowed some saliva. Remembering that she was to be his eldest sister-in-law, he lowered his head once more. Ji Yu Xiong hastily nodded. Yuan, let's go. We'll also send someone to get eldest brother. Initially, he did not plan to call Ji Yu Shubai to come along. As the heir to Marquis Gu's manor, he had many social obligations at this time of year. Moreover, he had just recovered from being poisoned, and it was inadvisable for him to go out. But after Ji Yu Xiong saw Yu Fu, he suddenly changed his mind. Yu Fu's current beauty would attract too much attention. If it was just him and Ji Yu Yi, he was worried that they would be unable to protect her. Ji Yu Shubai was currently in the main hall and meeting with the officers of the Ji Yu family's army, including Yang Huasha and Hua Shanjin. They knew that Marquis Gu's manor had many social obligations during the new year, and, more importantly, Ji Yu Huijiang had been unable to enjoy a happy new year because of the attack on Ji Yu Shubai. As a result, they decided to wait for a bit before coming to wish a happy new year. Either way, the members of the Ji Yu family army were considered family, thus Ji Yu Huijiang would not dislike them for coming a little later. Everyone, please have some tea. Unfortunately, father was summoned to the palace by His Majesty, leaving only me as company. It can't be helped. We just came today to see how the young general is doing. Just as he said this, a male servant was seen entering the room. It was Ji Yu Xiong and Ji Yu Yi's servant, Xiao Mutu. Eldest young sir, the fifth young sir and sixth young sir are inviting you to go out and look at lanterns. Ji Yu Shubai had intended to refuse, then suddenly thought of something. Is it just the two of them who are going to see the lanterns, or are they bringing Yu Fu as well? Xiao Mutu chuckled. They are bringing young Miss Yu Fu with them. Damn brats, if he did not go, they were planning to bring Yu Fu out themselves. If anything ended up happening, Jiyu Huijiang would have caned them until their butts bled. Jiyu Shubai was about to agree, but the room was filled with officers from the Jiyu family army. How could he ditch these people and just leave on his own? Hua Shanjin stood up. Young general, you go on ahead. We can feel at ease seeing that you are fine. We should also be on our way. Old Yang, isn't your son always saying that he wanted to repay young Miss Yu Fu for saving his life? Let him go with them. The sight of the bustling streets in the capital filled people with a sense of yearning. Standing at one end of the long street and looking toward the other, there was an endless sea of lanterns, which created a beautiful scene. Yu Fu walked side by side with Jiyu Shubai at the front, while Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi followed behind them. At the very back of the group were Yang Zheng and a few soldiers. Of course, these soldiers were dressed in civilian clothes. If they did not, who knows just how much attention they would draw on such a crowded street. Jiyu Yi looked back, then moved to Jiyu Xiong's side. Look at them. What the point of them wearing civilian clothes? It's immediately clear that they're soldiers. They're standing as straight as planks. Jiyu Xiong snuck a look back and could not hold back his laughter. It's true. Look at how careful Yang Zheng is. It's as if there are assassins all around us. What a joke. With Jiyu Shubai personally taking the lead and with he and Jiyu Yi helping out, could it be that they would be unable to protect Yu Fu? If not for Hua Shanjing being so chatty, they could not have needed to bring Yang Zheng along. Eldest brother, look. There are so many people. Occasionally, pedestrians might get too close, and Jiyu Shubai would move to use his arms to pull Yu Fu into his embrace, shielding her from the people passing by. When the two came close, his chin happened to brush against her head. When Yu Fu lifted her head, she could clearly see the concern in his eyes. With eyes that shone like stars and were filled with kindness, it felt as if he did not see anyone aside from her. Yu Fu's face turned slightly red, as her chest began to beat like a drum that was following a rapid beat. Jiyu Yi stretched his arms and legs, resigning himself to being bumped into by others. Jiyu Xiong, I've suddenly started to miss the tomboy. If she was here, I could also protect her. Jiyu Xiong rolled his eyes. What? Now that you have both been paired up, you're ganging up to bully me? With a whooshing sound, a person's figure suddenly rushed to the front and stood in front of Yu Fu. Move aside. Hey, I'm talking to you. Move a little to the side. Yang Zheng was tall and large. With his bearing as a soldier, anyone who saw him ferociously standing in front of Yu Fu would go around. There was no longer any need for Jiyu Shubai to shield Yu Fu with his body, but he seemed to be a little displeased. He never should have listened to Hua Shanjin and brought this rash person along. Yang Zheng turned back and smiled at Yu Fu. Young miss, don't worry. With me here, nobody will be able to bump into young miss. On that day, he had rushed back to Marquis Gu's manor while forcing himself to endure and stay awake, never daring to stop and rest. The first person that he saw was Yu Fu. When he woke up, he was lying down in one of the western wing's side rooms. A young maidservant was in the middle of feeding him his medicine. It was only then that he knew that Yu Fu had saved him. She had treated the poison afflicting him and left medicine for Yarolan to feed to him every day to get rid of any lingering poison. The grace of saving his life was something that he had been unable to repay. Now that he finally had the chance to protect Yu Fu, he would definitely do a good job. Oh, thank you. Yu Fu helplessly stood behind him. Seeing Jiyu Shubai glare daggers at Yang Zheng, she let out a laugh. Hey, isn't that Shubai's group? On the third floor of a building further down the street, the second prince stood next to the railing and looked down at the crowd. It was not just the civilians who liked going out at night during the Lantern Festival to look at the various lanterns, as quite a few young sirs and young misses from noble families would also go out to play. He had sent someone early to reserve the third floor of this restaurant for the sake of not needing to mingle with the crowd and happily take in the scenery at night. Where? Princess Danyang walked up from behind him and followed the second prince's finger and looked where he was pointing. Sure enough, she immediately saw Jiyu Shubai in the crowd. His tall body was slim and graceful, and his bearing was lofty. He was as graceful as the clouds above the mountain peaks and as refined as the scented Solomon's seal. No matter where she went, she would always be able to find him. Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi are also there. The girl at his side is Yu Fu. Princess Danyang did not dare believe it, as she leaned against the railing to look. Furrowing her brow, she asked, "Second brother, is that Yu Fu? How did she become so beautiful? It looks as though she grew up overnight." The second prince looked at Yu Fu, his pupils slightly constricting. Who knew what he was thinking? After a long period of time, he finally said, "She was always very beautiful. It's just that she did not catch people's attention because she was young, but have you ever seen any girl who is as beautiful as her? Girls at that age grow quickly, and it's already been 3 months since you last saw her at Lord Marquis Gu's birthday celebration. It's natural that there would be a great deal of change." Princess Danyang faintly snorted and turned away to ignore him. He was clearly poking at a sore spot by bringing that up. He clearly knew that the announcement of Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu's engagement at Jiyu Huijiang's birthday banquet was something of a sore spot for her, yet he still chose to poke at it. The second prince also seemed to realize that he had said something wrong and hastily tried to make up for it. "Dear little sister, it was I who misspoke, so just forgive second brother, alright? I know that you are still thinking about Jiyu Shubai, so second brother will go and invite them up. How does that sound for an apology?" After saying this, he raised his hand and had a personal guard go and invite Jiyu Shubai's group. Princess Danyang turned her head, but that person had already disappeared. She anxiously said, "Who's still thinking about him? Since he won't marry me, what would I still think about him for? Everyone knew that I used to like him, so how awkward would it be for me if you invited him up here?" The second prince lightly chuckled. "Who said that he won't marry you? Though Lord Marquis Jiyu openly expressed that he wants to have him marry Yu Fu, I heard that Immortals Valley did not agree. They also haven't exchanged keepsakes. The rites for the engagement have not yet been completed. Who dares to say that he will definitely marry Yu Fu?" Princess Danyang fell silent. Thinking back to the day of Jiyu Huijiang's birthday banquet, this did indeed seem to be the case. Her complexion recovered slightly, as she could not stop herself from smiling. "All right, if that's the case, seeing them can't be helped. For the sake of having Father Emperor announce second brother as the crown prince, we can't distance ourselves from Marquis Gu's manner." An understanding smile appeared in the second prince's eyes. He understood his little sister better than anyone else. She might say that she does not want to see Jiyu Shubai since he got engaged, but she still liked him. As long as there was the slightest chance that she could marry him, she would not let go of it. Girls, they really were unable to get past their feelings. There was no shortage of young couples walking about. The girls, with sweet smiles on their faces, held lanterns given to them by their lover. Passing by a small stall that sold lanterns, Jiyu Shubai asked, "Yu Fu, I'll buy a small and cute one for you to hold. What do you think?" Yu Fu followed his gaze and took a look. This small stall had many beautiful lanterns. They were all hanging from a bamboo rack to the side. She stood at the foot of the bamboo rack and looked up, resting a finger on her chin. "I can only get one, but these are all so beautiful." The lanterns sold in the street stalls were all handcrafted, unlike the ones in the manor. Though the lanterns in the manor were of exceptional quality, they were made to be displayed, thus there was a limit to the shapes that could be made, and they were all patterns that symbolized prosperity and auspiciousness. The ones made by the stalls were not as fine, but the variety of patterns dazzled Yu Fu. Jiyu Shubai stood behind her and waited for her to slowly decide, "If you buy more, would you be able to hold all of them?" Yu Fu also thought this to be true. If she held 2 lanterns, she would not have an unoccupied hand. Jiyu Shubai and the others would have their hands free, but it would not be good to have a bunch of grown men holding these sorts of things meant for younger girls. "Then I'll choose that lantern of the puppy." She pointed at a lantern with a charming white puppy, and Jiyu Shubai immediately understood why she chose it. Did this and Pang Ju, the puppy that she was raising, not look exactly the same? The owner of the stall was an old man with a kind countenance, and he brought down the lantern with the puppy on it for her. Many thanks, young miss, for the kind words. All of these lanterns were made by this old man. If young miss likes it, you can have it. I won't take your money. Yu Fu received the lantern but hastily waved her hand upon hearing this. No, no, money must be paid. The old man smiled and said, to have young miss carry a lantern that I made is an honor. Also, if others were to see such a beautiful young miss holding a lantern that I made, they will definitely rush to come and buy one. Yu Fu was worried that this old man would not take her money and quickly reached for the purse hanging at her hip but only felt a few gems that she kept to play with. There was no silver or copper. For someone who almost never went out, where would they carry silver? Yang Zheng was about to rush forward to hand over some silver but had a corner of his clothes grabbed by Ji Yuxiong. Don't go up and add to the trouble. Do you still want to find a young wife or not? Handing over silver and wanting to find a young wife, how were they connected? Yu Fu could not find any silver and turned somewhat awkwardly to tug at the hem of Ji Yu Shubai's clothes. Eldest brother, did you bring any money? It was Ji Yu Shubai who had mentioned wanting to buy her a lantern. Seeing Yu Fu unable to find any money but not make a sound, he wanted to see if she would turn to him for help. Fortunately, the one that Yu Fu looked to was him and not Ji Yuxiong, Ji Yu Yi, or Yang Zheng. This made him feel satisfied. I did. He happily extended a hand to the old man, and something hard rolled into the old man's sleeve. Ji Yu Shubai nodded to him. There are many people outside tonight. Elder sir should take a look after getting home. The winter days are cold, so go back early to rest. The old man did not understand what this meant. When Ji Yu Shubai's group left, he could not control his curiosity and pulled the hard object out of his sleeve. Heavens, it was a gold ingot the size of an egg. The lantern with the white puppy pattern swayed while she held it. Yu Fu was very satisfied. If not for her concern about the candle inside the lantern, she might have begun bouncing while she walked. Suddenly, an attendant dressed in black clothes rushed up from behind. His appearance was very familiar. It felt like he was one of the second prince's personal attendants. He saluted Ji Yu Shubai. Greetings, eldest young sir. Eldest young sir. The second prince invites the eldest young sir, the other young sirs, and the young miss upstairs to look at the lanterns. Ji Yu Shubai followed his finger and looked at where he was pointing. Sure enough, on the third floor of a building further down the street, he saw the second prince leaning against the railing and waving to them. The girl in a flowery dress next to the second prince was Princess Danyang. He retracted his gaze and looked at the attendant. All right, lead the way. Everyone ascended the building and found that there were tens of private rooms on the floor, but aside from the second prince and Princess Danyang, there was nobody else present. Second prince has quite the influence, reserving this entire floor for the sake of looking at lanterns. It might be a bit of a waste. Ji Yu Shubai stepped forward and cupped his hands in a salute, then turned to greet Princess Danyang. Princess Danyang had not seen him in a long time and had been worried that the atmosphere would be awkward when they met. In the end, he had his usual composure, and she silently rejoiced. She bowed, Brother Shubai. From the moment that the group had come up the stairs, the second prince's eyes never left Yu Fu. Girls change a great deal as they grow. Sister Yu Fu has grown taller and has a new style. Who knows just how many girls in the capital are envious of your beauty. Holding her lantern, Yu Fu was enjoying herself. Hearing herself brought up, she knew that she would not be able to continue playing, thus she handed the lantern to Yang Zheng. She bowed, Greetings, second prince. Second prince's praise is too much. It is often said that one thinks about one's deficiencies the most, and Yu Fu was no longer the little child who would rejoice whenever she heard someone praise her for growing taller. Ji Yu Shubai also said, That's right. Yu Fu is still young, thus beauty is still not much of a topic for her. Subconsciously or otherwise, he moved to hide Yu Fu behind himself. The meaning of his actions was clear without any need for words. Seeing Yu Fu feel reassured by this action, Princess Danyang felt a wave of frustration wash over her. The second prince raised his hand, and everyone went out to sit on the balcony. Looking at the capital from this spot, the bustling streets were in full view. Looking nearby, They could see the beautiful patterns on the lanterns. Looking into the distance, they could only see the flickering lights in a variety of colors. It was resplendent like a river of lights made by the deities. How is it? The view from here is nice, right? The second prince was quite proud. Every year during the Lantern Festival, the streets are sure to be filled with people, as countless people come out to play. This building is always in high demand, so it's fortunate that I made a reservation early on, otherwise, we would have no choice but to crowd into one place with the citizens. Ji Yu-seong was looking at the flickering lights off in the distance and suddenly turned his head upon hearing these words. In the past, we would always come out to look at the lanterns, and we would always be part of the crowd of people. For sturdy military people, squeezing into a crowd can't be helped, but for someone of such high birth as Your Highness, it would be best to be careful. The speaker spoke without much thought, but the listener thought about it too much. The second prince heard this and worried that others might feel that he was acting too haughtily, thus added, "Though this prince is not as skilled as you guys in martial arts, I am not that fragile. What's most important is that I brought Danyang along, thus it's not good to join the crowd." He ended up using Princess Danyang as a shield to deflect. As a princess, it was fine for her to be a little haughty, and nobody would say anything. Princess Danyang said, "Yuan, that's right. Sister Yu Fu is beloved by all of you, and second brother treats me the same. Right, brother Shubai, has the poison already been completely treated? Do you want to have an imperial physician take another look?" Ji Yu Shubai smiled politely. "Many thanks, princess, for the concern. Yu Fu studied in Immortal's Valley. If she said that I'm fine, I'm fine. I fully believe her. Even after so many years, he always spoke to her so courteously." Princess Danyang was unhappy about this and looked at Yu Fu. "That's true. Sister Yu Fu is an immortal practitioner of poison and would be most familiar with using poison to hurt people, right? Who knew that you would also know how to treat poison? Yuan, I don't just know how to treat poisons, but I also know how to treat wounds and injuries. If Princess has an illness, Yu Fu wishes to be of help." Yu Fu pretended not to understand the sarcastic undertones, as she continued to look at the bustling night scenery and did not turn around to reply. Ji Yu Shubai slightly raised an eyebrow and noticed the mocking tone of Yu Fu's words. No matter how others spoke to her, she never paid it much mind. She would only speak up if there was a chance of harming the others from Marquis Gu's manner. For example, when the clan elder misspoke outside the ancestral hall and called Ji Yu Huijiang muddled. The only other time would be if it was something that went too far, for example when cheating framed her for sneaking into the outer study, or when Liu Ayui had snatched the treasured necklace from her. This was the only time that Yu Fu had gotten provoked by words alone. Was she declaring who she belonged to? Princess Danyang's anger caused her complexion to change. Looking over at the second prince, he had no intention of protecting her. On the contrary, he was looking at Yu Fu with quite a bit of interest. The look in his eyes was the same as if he had found prey in the middle of a forest. It carried a contentious look. A girl who had an unforgiving tone was cuter than one who was always gentle. She was like a little stray kitten. Ji Yu Shubai slightly furrowed his brow. He felt that the way the second prince was looking at Yu Fu tonight was very strange. It was different than in the past. He could not immediately say what exactly was different. "Second brother is in good spirits. I heard that you reserved an entire floor to look at the lanterns, so I will thank you for your hospitality and take a seat. Second brother won't refuse, right?" The sound of footsteps came from the stairwell, and the eldest prince appeared before everyone. He was a little stunned. "Shubai. So second brother also invited you guys. It seems that I am the one causing a disturbance." It was hard to say whether the eldest prince really did not know that Ji Yu Shubai's group was here or was just pretending not to know. Since he was already standing here, it would not be good for the second prince to chase him off in front of Ji Yu Shubai's group. As a result, he could only invite him over to have a seat. The eldest prince looked over Ji Yu Shubai with a smile, then looked at Ji Yu Yi. "Hearing that the two of you are fine, I can be at ease. When you two first returned, I thought of visiting, but I was worried that Marquis Gu's manor would be too busy, and my visiting would add to the problems. Ji Yi smiled shamelessly. I was always completely fine. It was eldest brother who was poisoned. But eldest brother has already recovered and was able to come out to look at the lanterns with us. Was he not embarrassed to say it? If not for he and Ji Xiong, those two half-grown brats, wanting to take Yu Fu out to play, would Ji Shubai have needed to go through the effort of coming out? There was a long list of things to take care of in the manor waiting for him to handle. The eldest prince then said to Yu Fu, I heard that this time, it was Yu Fu who went with Ju Ji to look for you guys. Uncle Ji Yu must really care about you guys, right? But I feel that this trip out was quite good. The young girl got to go out and get some training and has become much more steady. Even the eldest prince could tell what sorts of changes were quietly occurring with Yu Fu. Yu Fu smiled and said, Am I getting to be more and more like the head general? I heard the clan's elders discussing it, saying that I look more and more like I am the head general's actual daughter. Ji Xiong said, Speaking of, head prince, you have no idea how mighty Yu Fu was that day. Father allowed her to enter the ancestral hall, but the clan's elders refused, saying where is there any place for girls to enter the ancestral hall? What? Uncle Ji Yu allowed Yu Fu to enter the ancestral hall? Princess Danyang was the first to notice. As a princess, not even she could enter the imperial ancestral hall, yet Yu Fu, an adopted daughter, why was she allowed to enter the ancestral hall of Marquis Gu's manor? That's right. As a result, take a guess at how Yu Fu replied. Ji Yi cheerfully chimed in. Yu Fu said, In this world, what is there that males can do that females can't? She even listed quite a few examples, which turned the clan's elders' faces green and left them speechless. Ji Shubai glanced at him, giving him a look to tell him not to say so much. Although it was not much of a secret, it was still a familial matter for Marquis Gu's manor, thus there was no need to tell outsiders so much. The eldest prince was a little surprised, then let out a laugh, as expected of Yu Fu. These words really are quite imposing. You have been at Marquis Gu's manor for quite a while, so it's natural that you would have a bit of a general's bearing. This is a good thing. Brother Yijiao, you also feel that way? The eldest prince and Yu Fu chatted and laughed. The atmosphere had improved quite a great deal from earlier, as Ji Xiong and Ji Yi were happy to join in. Ji Shubai held his cup of tea with a smile and lifted it toward the second prince. The second prince also lifted his cup. His expression was a little awkward. He was clearly the first one to notice Ji Shubai's group, and he had gone out of his way to invite his group up to look at the lanterns. But the result was that the eldest prince came, and he ended up as the center of attention. It was clear that the people from Marquis Gu's manor were closer to him. Ji Shubai did not show any clear bias, but that was just because he was the family's heir and did not want to take the side of either prince. A bit of emotional bias would not affect his final choice. But the second prince still felt quite uncomfortable. He did not like that Yu Fu called the eldest prince brother Yijiao but kept a respectful distance and called him second prince. It was clear that she thought absolutely nothing of him. He was the son of the empress and the one most likely to become the crown prince. Which girl in Eastern Ling would not try to gain his favor? The more Yu Fu kept a respectful distance, the more he wanted to be met by her smiling face. It was to the point. Second prince. An attendant that had come out of the palace with them quickly climbed the stairs. It seemed that he had something to report. Seeing that the eldest prince was also present, he appeared a little hesitant. The eldest prince looked over. What sort of grand secret is this that the servant looks so nervous? If it's something that you do not wish for Shubai and me to hear, we can leave first. Saying this, he stood up and invited Ji Shubai to leave with him. The second prince gritted his teeth. What is eldest brother saying? What sort of secret could I have to hide from you and Shubai? Everyone is family here. There's nothing to hide here. After saying this, he looked at the attendant and gave him a look of warning. What happened? Go ahead and speak. Ji Shubai noticed this look and knew that he was telling the attendant to reveal what could be said and leave the rest for later. The eldest prince's trick was also quite vicious. The second prince being on guard against him was something that the court officials knew, Yet he had dragged himself into it. The second prince wished to maintain a relationship with Marquis Gu's manor, thus he could not admit that he was on guard against the members of Marquis Gu's manor. He could only have the attendant report it now. The attendant did not hesitate in the slightest, replying to the two princes and eldest young sir, "News has come from the palace that Prime Minister Yin has retired from court and is returning home." What? This really was quite the big news. Yin Yang was perfectly fine, so why would he retire? He was only in his 50s, and there were officials in court who were in their 60s. To retire at this age, there had to be a reason. The second prince hastily said, "Has Father Emperor allowed it?" What reason was given? The attendant said, "His Majesty has already accepted it." It said that the Imperial Court of Justice found that the assassination attempt on the life of the heir to Marquis Gu's manor was directed by Prime Minister Yin. There was also the seventh prince from Western Kuan who served as a witness, and apparently, Prime Minister Yin has already admitted it. His Majesty considered his position to be unique and permitted him to resign from his position and return home. In an instant, everyone turned to look at Jiyu Shubai in surprise. The main street had people coming and going. Arriving in an area that was bustling with people, Jiyu Joga's horse could not move. He had initially returned from a social engagement to ask Yu Fu if she wanted to go out and see the lanterns, but when he entered the manor, he heard the gatekeeper say that Yu Fu's group had already gone out. He immediately ordered a horse to set out from the manor, but when he reached the main street, he could not find Yu Fu's group. Weird, the servants clearly said that they were on this street. Why are they not here? Jiyu Juji lifted his head to look at the restaurants and tea houses to the side. He had wanted to take a look but decided to give up on that idea. Every year during the Lantern Festival, those restaurants and tea houses would be reserved in advance by wealthy and noble families, and Marquis Gu's manor never bothered spending that money. Yu Fu's group should not be in such a place. In the end, he decided to continue looking along the street. Arriving at the bridge, he suddenly noticed that there were quite a few lanterns drifting along on the river below. They had been released by the citizens to pray for good fortune. The area around the river was dark. Though the lights from the lanterns illuminated everyone's faces, their features could not be seen clearly. Jiyu Juji thought quickly and walked down from the bridge. Yu Fu might like these lanterns and walked down from the bridge. He would go down next to the river to look around. He might even be able to find them down there. The path near the river was not long. As he searched from the bottom of the path to the top, the number of lanterns in the river gradually decreased. The number of people next to the river also decreased. Jiyu Juji let out a sigh. Knowing that Yu Fu's group was not here, he prepared to leave. He suddenly heard a sob come from beneath a willow. In this quiet environment, it really stood out. He instantly reached for the sword at his hip. "Who's there?" The person sobbing beneath the willow heard a familiar voice and wiped away their tears with a handkerchief before slowly walking out. In the shadows, he could only see a girl's slender figure. Her figure when walking resembled a thin willow bending in the wind, and it looked like a willow tree had become a spirit. "Is that second young Sir Jiyu?" This voice sounded familiar. Jiyu Juji put his sword away. "Is that young Miss Yin?" He had seen many girls but remembered very few. Yin Jiaro could be considered one of them. The girl walked out from the shadow of the willow. Sure enough, it was Yin Jiao, but the tears on her face had not yet dried, and she looked very heartbroken. "What happened? Why are you here alone?" Yin Jiaro wiped away some tears. "I came out to look at the lanterns and had maidservants and guards with me. But after hearing the news that came from the manor, I was feeling miserable and sent them away." Jiyu Juji paused. "Since it's a familial matter for the Prime Minister's manor, I won't ask about it. But young Miss Yin, it's not safe to be here on your own. I will escort you back to your manor." Yin Jiaro desperately shook her head and bit down hard on her lips. "I don't want to go back to the manor. At the very least, I don't want to go back right now." Jiyu Juji was anxious to go and look for Yu Fu's group, But he also could not do something as ungraceful as abandoning a girl like Yin Jiaro here on her own. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's cold near the river. If young Miss Yin does not wish to return to the manor right now, how about I take you to a restaurant to sit for a bit?" Yin Jiaro was naturally slender and disliked wearing thick clothes, finding that they did not give her a beautiful figure. Earlier, she had been too distraught to notice the cold, but now that Jiu Juji had mentioned it, she found that her hands and feet were cold. Hastily pulling her cloak tight to cover her neck, she followed Jiu Juji away from the riverside. The two randomly chose a restaurant along the main street. After drinking a cup of hot tea, Yin Jiao's complexion improved a great deal. Jiu Juji said, "This place is warm, but it's a pity that we won't be able to see the lanterns on the street. The spots that can see them were reserved tens of days in advance." His tone was always gentle, and Yin Jiao's face turned a little red. She was very rarely treated so kindly by others. From the first time she met Jiu Juji, there had been a strange feeling inside her chest. This time, they had a chance meeting when she was at her lowest point, and she had received his care and concern once more. This made that strange feeling in her chest grow even more. Having somewhere to hide from the wind is already great. "Many thanks, second young sir." Jiu Juji only smiled. Picking up a kettle of wine, he drank on his own and did not say anything else. He did not ask, but Yin Jiao wanted to speak. "In truth, today is the day of my mother's death. Every year at this time, I would go and pay my respects. But this year, father did not let me leave the city and told me to just stay in the manor. Even coming out to look at the lanterns tonight, I had to wait until he wasn't paying attention to sneak out." Jiu Joga's hand froze. He suddenly remembered that the madam of the Prime Minister's manor also passed away early. He and Yin Jiao were the same. Both were people who had no mother. She had said that the Prime Minister's manor very rarely allowed her to go out. Was that the reason that she was not permitted to go and pay her respects? Jiu Juji said, "Did you decide to go and cry under the tree from the heartbreak of suddenly remembering your mother?" Yin Jiao said, "It's not like that. It has been many years since mother has passed away, and that no longer causes me any sadness. Since father did not allow me to personally pay my respects, I had a servant go on my behalf. Who knew that the servant would come back and tell me that this year's heavy snow covered my mother's grave, and he could not find it." As she spoke, tears started to well up in her eyes. Jiu Juji could not stop himself from laughing. What is there to cry about with this? The snow not melting in places that are cold and dark outside the city is quite normal. It will melt away in a few days. Won't you be able to find it when you go then? The grave will be there and can't run off. What he said was true. Yin Jiao's tears turned to laughter. I was a little too anxious, not even understanding something so simple. Please don't laugh at me. The two exchanged a look then laughed. Jiu Juji had already drank some wine today, and now he had downed another 2 cups on his own, thus the wine was taking even more of an effect. He suddenly remembered something. How could Prime Minister Yin's wife have a grave that could be completely covered by the snow? Only graves out in the wilderness that were not overseen by anyone and unmarked graves would be covered up by the snow. Yin Jiao looked out then stood up and bowed. "Second young sir, my maidservant has come looking for me. I will be leaving first." Saying this, she began to walk out before turning around and smiling to him. "Thank you." "What are you all looking at me for?" Jiu Shubai looking calm. "I'm also very shocked. How could it be Prime Minister Yin who would want to kill me?" His tone did not at all sound shocked. It was extremely calm. It was clear that he had known about this for quite some time. At the very least, he had his suspicions. The eldest prince and the second prince exchanged a glance, but neither could find any clues in the other's eyes. Could it be that Yin Yang had been suppressed by Jiu Huijiang for so many years that he chose to make use of an unconventional method and assassinate Jiu Shubai? Such a possibility existed, but it still sounded a little far-fetched. Father Emperor has always had faith in Prime Minister Yin. leaving all of the court's important matters to him. Who knew that he would betray the hopes of imperial favor? A prime minister suddenly retiring is not a small matter. It will definitely have an effect on the court situation. The two princes were both a little nervous. Any slight change in the court situation could result in a change in the prince's situations. Yu Fu slowly said, "That's right. Now that Prime Minister Yin has retired, do we know who will become the next prime minister?" The two princes seemed to come to a divine revelation, as the two happened to stand up at the same time. The second prince was the first to say, "Everyone, please take your time in enjoying the lanterns. Father Emperor must be feeling uneasy right now. I will be going into the palace to console Father Emperor and will be leaving first." After saying this, he gave Princess Danyang a look, and the two quickly left the building. The eldest prince also said, "I will also be going into the palace to see Father Emperor. Shubai, don't worry. I will do my best to get justice for you." He too quickly left. After they all left, Jiyu Shubai smiled and looked at Yu Fu. "Yu Fu, I noticed that you've learned something bad. Who did you learn it from?" If not for her asking who will become the next prime minister, how could the two dignified princes of Eastern Ling have acted in such haste? Yu Fu pouted, "Even if I didn't remind them, they would have realized it sooner or later. Rather than watch the two of them sit here while worrying about losses and gains, it would be better to just send them away sooner, so we can sit here and freely enjoy the lanterns." Hearing her say this, Ji Yu Xiong found it very entertaining. "Little Yu Fu, I always that you treated the eldest prince and the second prince differently, but hearing you say this, it seems that you don't really like the two of them." The reason that the eldest prince and the second prince got close with Marquis Guzmana was something that even an idiot could figure out. But on a more personal level, the eldest prince was a bit closer than the second prince. He was also a bit more fun to talk to. Yu Fu also called the eldest prince brother Yi Jiao with a very intimate tone. Yu Fu thought for a moment then said, "There's not really any like or dislike. In truth, it's all the same. I just feel that the eldest prince has good awareness of the situation. Compared to the prideful second prince, I would rather get closer to him." Jiyu Shubai crooked the corners of his lips into a smirk, seemingly very satisfied with what she had just said. Who knew if he was satisfied with her appraisal of the two princes, or if it was because she did not have any special feelings for the eldest prince. Since they've already left, let's also return to the manor. Father was summoned to the palace today, and it must have been related to that matter. I want to hear the details from Father. Then let's move quickly. I also want to hear Father tell us why exactly Prime Minister Yin wanted to kill us. Although Jiyu Yi had not been harmed in the slightest, he had been holed up inside the cave in fear for 2 days, thus he felt that he had the most right to be indignant. Everyone descended the stairs to return to the manor. The night was dark, and there were now much fewer people on the street. "Eldest brother." Jiyu Joga's voice came from behind them, and everyone turned back to look. Sure enough, they saw him. "Where did you guys go to look at the lanterns? I've been looking for you guys all night and still could not find you. Jiyu Xiong, Jiyu Yi, if you guys were going to take Yu Fu out to see the lanterns, why didn't you call me?" Jiyu Xiong pointed at the tall building beside them. "We're being accused wrongly. When we left the manor, second brother wasn't home. How could we call you?" Jiyu Juji looked at where he pointed. He felt bitter but could not say it. He had passed by this building 5 or 6 times tonight, yet he never thought of going up to look for them. It turned out that they were so close, yet he had completely missed them. Jiyu Shubai said, "We were originally looking at the lanterns from the street, but we were invited up by the second prince. Let's not talk about this for now and return to the manor." Jiyu Juji was almost unable to stop himself from rolling his eyes. "You're returning the manor already? I only just found you guys and have not had a chance to look at the lanterns." After all, he had not come out tonight to look at the lanterns. He had come out to look for them, but as soon as he found them, they would be returning to the manor. Yu Fu stuffed the lantern with the white puppy on it into his hands. "Second brother, just look at this one. Look, doesn't it look a lot like Pang Ju?" Jiyu Juji received just a bit of comfort. Looking carefully, It really did look like Pang Ju. He laughed at said, "This lantern really is beautiful. It's very different from the ones in the manor." Yu Fu thought to herself that it was natural that it looked good. This was one that Jiyu Shubai had paid a gold ingot for. Could it not look good? Jiyu Shubai smiled and gave him a tug. "Let's go." Did you know that His Majesty has already uncovered that the one behind the plot to assassinate Jiyu Yi and me was Prime Minister Yin? At this moment, Father must have already returned to the manor. Do you not want to hear more about it? Jiyu Juji was surprised. What? It was Prime Minister Yin? He suddenly remembered Yin Jiao, who had just been taken back to the Prime Minister's manor. With such a great misfortune befalling the Prime Minister's manor, it was no wonder that they were in such a rush to get her back. She had been crying so miserably and would probably feel even worse after hearing this news. Jiyu Yi gave him a push. "Second brother, what are you blanking out for? Let's go." A figure rushed out from a side street. Kuan Wushong stood on the main street and looked around the bustling street but did not see any sign of Yu Fu's group. It was already late at night, and fewer people were walking around. He was able to see the entire street clearly. Thinking about it, they must no longer be here, right? Kuan Wushong exhaled and created a small white cloud. Strange, Jiyu Juji had clearly come in this direction, so why is it that I don't even see him? He turned his head. Off in the distance where the lantern lights were waning, there was a group of people that looked vaguely familiar. Was that Yu Fu's group? Kuan Wushong immediately wanted to catch up to them. However, after some thought, Jiyu Juji had only just arrived. How could they go back so quickly? He would go and look in the direction where there were more lanterns. He rushed ahead and away from Yu Fu's group, gradually getting further and further away. After returning to the manor, they found that Jiyu Huijiang was indeed already in the main hall. Jiyu Hanmo and the others were also present. It seemed that they were waiting for everyone to return to talk about what had happened in the palace. Yu Fu held the lantern with the white puppy on it and wanted to hand it off to Yang Zheng before stepping inside. However, she saw Jiyu Huijiang smiling. "The lanterns outside must be much more beautiful, right? The one that you're holding is very unique." Jiyu Huijiang had always been like this. No matter how strict he was with others, he always smiled when talking with Yu Fu. Yu Fu decided to just bring the lantern inside for him to see. The lanterns in the manor are also beautiful. It's just that there isn't much variety. There were a lot of people walking around and looking at lanterns tonight. It would have been nice if Head General could have come with us. The timing was not good this year. Next year, I will go with you to see the lanterns. How about it? Yu Fu vigorously nodded her head. Yuan. After saying this, she obediently sat down and raised the lantern toward Jiyu Wenqing. The latter knowingly winked to her. Jiyu Shubai said, "When Father went into the palace today, was it because His Majesty wanted to talk to you about the attempted assassination case? You guys already know? We met the second prince and the eldest prince when we were out, and the second prince's subordinate reported it. It was only then that we found out." Jiyu Huijiang calmly nodded his head. The Imperial Court of Justice found that there were some suspicious movements made by the Prime Minister's manor prior to the end of the year. Lord Ji from the Imperial Censorate learned through rumors that Prime Minister Yin collaborated with Western Kuan's special envoy and Kuan Wushong. Since this matter was related to Marquis Gu's manor, His Majesty also summoned me into the palace. Jiyu Shubai said, "We heard that it was Western Kuan's special envoy that pointed out Prime Minister Yin's wrongdoing. They came to Eastern Ling with bad intentions, and His Majesty believed them just like that." Jiyu Huijiang shook his head. "Naturally, that's not the case. It was Prime Minister Yin who willingly admitted that he had dispatched the assassins. He willingly admitted it." Everyone was shocked to hear this. Prime Minister Yin had always disliked Marquis Gu's manor, thus it was not strange for him to dispatch assassins, but to willingly admit it was strange. Gu Juji said, "Without any evidence, why would he willingly admit it? This is not Prime Minister Yin's usual way of doing things." From the moment that Jiu Huijiang left the palace, he had been considering this question. Even now, he could not figure it out. At the time, he had been paying close attention to Yin Yang. All of his answers were logical and meticulous. It seemed that he had prepared beforehand. This is not the only strange part. Kuan Wushong said that it was Yin Shuo who had requested the poison. Since he wanted to get close with an official in Eastern Ling, he handed it over without asking any questions. However, Prime Minister Yin said that it was he who told Yin Shuo to request the poison, thus Yin Shuo had no idea what the poison was for. Kuan Wushong was in the dark, and Yin Shuo was also in the dark. How could this be possible? Neither of them looked like idiots, especially Yin Shuo. If Yin Yang did not want him to know something, there was absolutely no need to have him ask Kuan Wushong for the poison. Jiu Shubai remembered something. I wonder if father still remembers. On the day of your birthday banquet, the old servant who was tidying the room next to the outer study said that he saw Yin Shuo. On the day of the birthday banquet, when Jiu Huijiang suddenly left the banquet, Kuan Wushong made his way to the outer study. Sure enough, he took the opportunity to enter the study and tried to find some military information that would be useful to Western Kuan. At that time, Yin Shuo would definitely have seen him from the neighboring building. Even Jiu Yi was able to react to this. Eldest brother means to say that Prime Minister Yin took the initiative in admitting it to protect Yin Shuo? It was Yin Shuo who asked Kuan Wushong for the poison, and it was Yin Shuo who wanted to kill us. Unfortunately, Emperor Ning would not believe Kuan Wushong. He was the prince of an enemy state, and he had a history of trying to steal military secrets. Comparing his testimony with Yin Yang's testimony, it was natural that Emperor Ning would truth Yin Yang. Jiu Huijiang glanced at him but did not respond to his question directly. Regardless of who it was, the one that His Majesty trusts is more important. Seeing that Prime Minister Yin took the initiative to admit it, His Majesty decided to give an old subject some face and allowed him to resign from his position. Eldest brother and sixth brother were almost unable to come back. If not for second brother and Yu Fu arriving just in time, they really would have been done in. Given the scale of this situation, that His Majesty allowed him to resign, this benefits him too much. Jiu Xiong was extremely displeased. Father, why did you not ask His Majesty to punish him severely? Jiu Huijiang looked at him. What sort of severe punishment? In the end, Shubai and Jiu Yi returned safely, and an investigation into Prime Minister Yin's guilt would just find that he failed an assassination attempt. Do you think that His Majesty only takes care of our Marquis Gu's manor and neglects the other officials in court? That's right. The Yin clan is not some nameless family. Their family has served loyally for 3 rulers. For His Majesty to ask him to resign is already the heaviest possible punishment. Even just showing consideration to the late Madam Yin, who was the daughter of the Crown Prince's imperial tutor, he could not give too heavy of a punishment. Jiu Shubai's words caused Jiu Juji to suddenly think of something. He said, "Eldest brother, the Crown Prince's imperial tutor that you just mentioned, would that be His Majesty's teacher from before he became the emperor?" Indeed. Madam Yin was the daughter of His Majesty's teacher and not some girl from a small family. Why would Yin Jiaro say that her grave had been covered by the snow? With the passing of the Lantern Festival, the imperial court reopened. With the court being reopened, it was exceedingly lively. The eldest prince and the second prince kept a close eye on the Prime Minister's spot, hating that they could not stay in the palace overnight and had to return to their manors. They competed to try and get someone from their faction into the position of Prime Minister. At this moment, whoever could convince His Majesty would take the lead in the competition for the position of Crown Prince. For this, there were quite a few officials who had sent letters to Emperor Ning. Some were recommending officials capable of bearing such a heavy burden, while others went along with what the eldest prince or the second prince said. As for the old topic of deciding on a crown prince, it was dredged back up by some of the older officials. Emperor Ning had to deal with this noisiness for a long time and felt quite irritated. He had no choice but to move from his study to the inner palace. Your Majesty must be feeling quite frustrated. This concubine personally made a lotus seed and pigeon soup. It reduces the inner fire. Would Your Majesty like some? Inside Qinghua Palace, Imperial Consort Xian personally brought out Bacaro bowl. The fragrance of the lotus seed soup overflowed. Emperor Ning took a deep breath and said with a smile, "We immediately knew that it was our beloved consort's work. Though there are many members in the inner palace, there have not been many who would personally make food for us over the past 20 years. His gaze gently landed on Imperial Consort Xian's body. Imperial Consort, you already had the eldest prince and was now in her 40s. The feelings between the two, however, remained profound. The feelings were not that of youthful lust. Instead, it was something full of understanding, friendship, and love. Imperial Consort Xian slightly nodded, her complexion slightly red. It's an insignificant matter. This concubine does not have any other abilities and can only offer Your Majesty with these small gestures. If Your Majesty can feel at ease for a moment, this concubine will be satisfied." Emperor Ning received the bowl that she had brought over. Feeling her frigid fingertips, he tenderly held her hand. Imperial Consort Xian smiled and pulled her hand back. "It isn't a problem. It was this concubine who accidentally came into contact with the cold water when washing the lotus seeds." Emperor Ning heaved a sigh and slowly put down his soup. "The palace is without an empress, and you have helped us by managing the inner palace. It's important that you take care of yourself. There are some things that should be handled by the servants, so you can just leave them to the servants to handle. We don't like people who don't stick to their roles." His tone suddenly became stern, and Imperial Consort Xian hastily said, "Yes, this concubine understands." She vaguely felt that there was a second meaning to Emperor Ning's words. It seemed that he was irritated with someone not sticking to their role. After a moment of silence, she slowly moved behind Emperor Ning and began massaging his shoulders and neck. Those were areas that often got sore for him. Emperor Ning suddenly realized that his tone had become more severe. "You must have been scared, right? We are not mad at you. We are mad at Yin Yang. He is a senior official who served me for decades. In our heart, Marquis Jiyu is ranked first, while he is ranked second. Who knew that he would so lacking in sense of propriety, going so far as to try and assassinate the heir of Marquis Jiyu in an attempt to gain influence? This even made things more difficult for us." Imperial Consort Xian gently said, "Your Majesty is talking about selecting a new prime minister, right? A country cannot go a day without a prime minister. Since Prime Minister Yin has already resigned, this selection needs to be done a little faster." Emperor Ning said, "How could we not know the reasoning behind that? Yin Yang left a choice for us that we also feel was very fitting. But Yi Zhao and Cheng Ji both recommended officials, while neither is backing down. Furthermore, they're only recommending officials that are on good terms with them." Imperial Consort Xian dropped to her knees. It was this concubine whose teaching was lacking. Though Yi Zhao is the older brother, the second prince is the prince born of the empress. He's too lacking in understanding of the rules. How can he dare to compete with the second prince? Normally, when she said this sort of thing, Emperor Ning would always comfort her. The eldest prince was the older brother, and his position was not lower than that of the second prince. He would also tell her not to feel so inferior in order to keep the eldest prince from feeling bad. Today, however, Emperor Ning did not say anything. Imperial Consort Xian remained kneeling on the ground, feeling more and more uneasy. She just felt Emperor Ning's gaze linger on the top of her head. After a long time, that gaze finally pulled back. He extended his hand. "Get up. Yi Zhao is already an adult. He has his own ideas and cannot be controlled by you. You have managed the inner palace for many years, yet you never brought up anything to us that would overstep your authority. We fully understand." The corners of Imperial Consort Xian's lips were a little stiff, as she held Emperor Ning's hand and slowly stood up. He did not understand. A woman would not openly state what she wanted, but that did not mean that she did not want it. She simply understood that if Emperor Ning did not take initiative in giving her something, it meant that he did not wish to give it away. If not for that, the position of Empress would not have remained vacant for so many years after the late Empress' death. Imperial Consort Xian respectfully said, "This concubine thinks that Yi Zhao does not have any thoughts of overstepping his boundaries. Ever since he was young, he has been obedient and reasonable. As your Majesty's eldest son, he has helped share your Majesty's burdens and has done the best to fulfill his duties. We are worried that he has gone too far in fulfilling his duties." Imperial Consort Xian suddenly lifted her head. Emperor Ning's words were like a strike of lightning that struck the top of her head. After a long pause, she spoke with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty means, beloved consort, do you know the meaning behind our naming him Yi Zhao?" Imperial Consort Xian said, "This concubine knows. Yi means to support, and Zhao means bright. Your Majesty hopes that Yi Zhao can support your Majesty and be a bright and supportive person." "That's right." Emperor Ning patted her hand. "Not only do we hope that Yi Zhao can support us right now, but we hope that he can properly support the next ruler. Do you understand?" The woman's hand quietly pulled back and violently shook inside her broad sleeves. From the moment that the eldest prince was born, she understood this. The empress had not yet given birth to a son, yet she, an imperial consort, had given birth to the eldest prince. At that time, the empress and her family had many complaints. For the sake of placating the inner palace, he came up with this name for the eldest prince. It was the same as telling everyone that the eldest prince could not succeed him. Assistant to the ruler. What Imperial Consort Xian never considered, however, was that Emperor Ning would remain unchanged years after the empress died. She had worked diligently for many years and been a virtuous person, taking care of managing the inner palace for him, yet she was unable to receive even the slightest bit of his favor. Huijiang, what do you think of our decision? In the imperial garden, wintersweet were beginning to blossom, as Emperor Ning and Jiyu Huijiang walked side by side among them. Jiyu Huijiang was a person with a military background, and his body was not afraid of the cold. In addition to this, with the medicine prescribed by Yu Fu, he was even more robust during the cold days. Emperor Ning, however, could not take it. He was getting old and spent his days in the palace enjoying his powerful position. Whenever he went out into the cold, his body would begin to tremble. Jiyu Huijiang could see that he was cold and retrieved a bright yellow cloak from eunuch Gao, then personally draped it on his back. Emperor Ning turned to glance at him, and Jiyu Huijiang's hand froze before continuing to tie the cloak for him. Emperor Ning laughed and said, "We are already wearing a coat, and now you're adding a cloak on for us. This makes it look like we are very afraid of the cold." Jiyu Huijiang said, "This subject knows that your Majesty is not afraid of the cold, but the wintersweet are starting to blossom, thus there is not enough warmth underfoot. This is just a small gesture of this subject's consideration. I hope that your Majesty will not refuse." He always knew how to give face to Emperor Ning. Emperor Ning nodded his head. "The question that we asked you, you still have not given an answer." Jiyu Huijiang said, "Your Majesty was already planning to cultivate Yin Shuo with hopes of having him take over Prime Minister Yin's position. Now, it's just that Prime Minister Yin left the court a little early. When it comes to your Majesty's plans, it has no effect." Emperor Ning sighed, "That's right. We made this decision long ago. It's not an arrangement that came to me overnight. If the eldest prince and the second prince see this matter as clearly as you do, there would be no need for the competition to get like this." He reached out and felt the wintersweet. Though the frost-covered buds were small, they were quite lively. Emperor Ning liked them and waved eunuch Gao over. "Have someone pick a few of the nicer ones and send them to Imperial Consort Xian in a nice vase. We said a few things that were not too nice a few days ago. It would not be good to hurt her." Eunuch Gao saw that nobody else was around and covered up a smile. Your Majesty, there's no need to worry. Her Highness Imperial Consort Xian has always loved Your Majesty the most. How could she possibly get mad at Your Majesty? You're the only one who speaks so much. Emperor Ning gave him a quick scolding, but a smile appeared on his face. He looked toward Jiyu Huijiang. We previously asked you if you felt the eldest prince or the second prince was more suited to being the crown prince, and you always refused to provide us with an answer. In truth, we have also been feeling quite conflicted about it and have not been able to make a decision. The eldest prince is composed and intelligent. Ever since he was young, given that he is the eldest son, we have kept him at our side to train him. His performance has never let me down. The second prince is smart, bold, and can occasionally be a little domineering, but he has never made any major missteps. Jiyu Huijiang said, Indeed, the two princes are exactly like Your Majesty. No matter who is chosen as crown prince, they will definitely be able to govern Eastern Ling properly. Emperor Ning smiled and pointed at him, Don't just say things to make us happy. We know that we are as average a ruler as is possible to be. Eastern Ling is wealthier than Western Kuan, has more fertile lands, and has a larger population. If we were a daring ruler, how could Western Kuan dare to try and invade our territory year after year? Jiyu Huijiang did not respond to this. To say anything further would just be empty flattery. He did not want to say it, and Emperor Ning did not want to hear it. After a long pause, Emperor Ning continued, Even to this moment, we are conflicted, but this conflict between the two princes over the Prime Minister's position has finally allowed us to come to a clear conclusion. Regardless of who is more suitable to become the Crown Prince, we need to quickly recognize someone to keep the brothers from causing actual harm to each other over the position. That's why we hinted to Imperial Consort Xian that we never had any intention of naming the eldest prince as the Crown Prince. Jiyu Huijiang felt his heart drop. He felt that this move was not good. It was no wonder Emperor Ning said that he wanted to console Imperial Consort Xian. If word of this reached the eldest prince, not only could this fail to have him give up on the position of Crown Prince, but it might make him feel resentful. Your Majesty's thinking is logical. Regardless of who is chosen, it would be best to make the decision quickly and allow the other one to quickly give up on the idea. This is the best choice. Emperor Ning nodded with a bit of joy. It's fortunate that there was this matter with Yin Yang, or we really would not have been able to figure this point out. Imperial Consort Xian has always been gentle and virtuous, and the eldest prince has been understanding. After we announce the second prince as the crown prince and provide their mothers with some comfort, things will likely be fine. Jiyu Huijiang remained silent and did not respond. Emperor Ning turned his head and saw that he was looking at the flower buds on the tree. The buds had not yet bloomed, and the little bit of pink that appeared looked quite interesting when compared to a fully bloomed flower. Emperor Ning walked back with a smile. Do you also like wintersweet flowers? This is a new type that was brought in from the north. They were only just planted before the end of the year. We thought that your Marquis Gu's manner, as people with military backgrounds, would not like looking at things like flowers. That's why I never sent any to you. When he brought this up, he suddenly remembered something. We forgot. This year, your manor has Yufu. That little girl probably likes these sorts of flowers. We will have someone send some to your manor, but to see flowers bloom, that will probably need to wait until next year. Jiyu Huijiang cupped his hands in a salute. Then I will thank your Majesty. It would also be fine to wait a year. After all, Yufu will surely still be there a year from now. Emperor Ning teased him. That's right. The daughter will become the daughter-in-law. If you had such a plan, why didn't you tell me beforehand? It wasted our effort to try and match Shubai with Danyang. Who knew that you already had your eyes set on a daughter-in-law? Hearing this tone, it seemed that he did not have any complaints about Jiyu Shubai and Yufu. Jiyu Huijiang was a little embarrassed. I ask your Majesty for forgiveness. This subject, there's no need to explain. We dote on our daughter, and you also dote on your daughter. Wanting to find her the best partner who is talented and handsome, we obviously understand. But we need to think a bit. Who would be a good choice for Danyang to marry? While Emperor Ning spoke, he continued to walk further into the Wintersweet garden. Jiyu Huijiang stood behind him with his brow slightly furrowed. If the matter of naming a crown prince really was as simple as Emperor Ning had made it sound, that would be great. Unfortunately, whether it was Imperial Consort Xian or the eldest prince, neither were as understanding as he thought. Little Yu Fu, I heard some good news. Ji Yu Yi enthusiastically ran over to the western wing. Before even stepping inside, he began to shout. Yu Fu had already become accustomed to him acting this way and walked over from the corridor to say, "What good news? Western Kuan's special envoy will be returning to their country. Your junior disciple will also be leaving with them. Does this not count as good news?" Yu Fu was stunned. Kuan Wushong is leaving? She had wanted to ask why he would not let her know but suddenly remembered that Kuan Wushong was completely unable to get close to Marquis Gu's manor. Even Yarrow Lan refused to help pass along anything that he said. How could he let her know? Ji Yu Yi seemed to be able to tell what she was thinking. I heard one of the soldiers in the manor say that he came on the night of the Lantern Festival but was chased away before he could get close. Yu Fu said, "Wasn't that around the time that Prime Minister Yin resigned? It seems that he was planning to leave Eastern Ling at that time. No, there's something that I need to find him and ask him about." She quickly ran out of the western wing, while Ji Yu Yi shouted from behind, "Western Kuan's special envoy should have already left the city. How are you going to find him? Acting so hurriedly, what's making you so anxious?" Yu Fu ran out and bumped into Jiyu Shubai along the way. Fortunately, he caught her shoulder and kept her from falling down. What a nicely timed appearance. Yu Fu grabbed his sleeve. "Eldest brother, take me on a trip out of the manor. I will slowly tell you along the way." Outside the city gates, the eldest prince had been tasked with sending off Western Kuan's special envoy. The special envoys group gradually moved further and further away, and the eldest prince ordered for things to get tidied up. Just as he was about to return to the palace to report, he suddenly saw a fast horse riding out from the city. When the horse passed by the eldest prince, it suddenly stopped. Only then did he see that it was Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu on the horse. "Eldest prince, has Western Kuan's special envoy left?" "They just left." "What happened?" Jiyu Shubai lifted the reins. "Yu Fu wants to send off her junior disciple. When we get the chance, we will tell eldest prince more. Farewell." After he finished speaking, he rode off. The eldest prince watched them ride off for a while before climbing into his carriage and returning into the city. Just after the special envoy left Linen, Kuan Wushong ordered the group to slow down. It seemed as though he was waiting for someone. Kai Gan had already become accustomed to his seemingly mindless actions and waved his hand. "Seventh prince has the most authority. Just listen to his orders. There's no need to ask me." Asking him would also be pointless. Could he possibly be more stubborn than Kuan Wushong? At worst, they would be unable to reach the next post station before nightfall, so it would be fine if they dawdled a little. Suddenly, they saw a cloud of dust draw closer from the direction of Linen. One of the guards outside said, "Seventh prince, it seems that there is a horse riding after us. Should we have someone go and take a look?" Kuan Wushong suddenly lifted the curtain. "It must be Yu Fu. Stop the carriage. Come to a complete stop." He stood on the shaft of the carriage and looked into the distance. The cloud of dust made it hard to see who was riding the horse, but he was certain that it was Yu Fu. That horse was drawing closer at a high speed, and Kuan Wushong saw the girl sitting in front of Jiyu Shubai. Wearing a peach-colored coat that covered her face, he could immediately tell that it was Yu Fu. Aside from her, what other girl would be able to ride Jiyu Shubai's horse? "Little senior disciple, I'm here." He, who was prideful and domineering toward the special envoy, now spoke to Yu Fu very sweetly. The words little senior disciple were said so smoothly that Kai Gan could hear them from inside the carriage and let out a faint snort. Jiyu Shubai dismounted his horse and helped Yu Fu down. Yu Fu said, "Are you returning to Western Kuan or Immortals Valley? I will be returning to my country to report to Father Emperor first before quickly returning to Immortals Valley. Do you have anything you want me to pass along to Master?" Yu Fu shook her head and handed him a small porcelain bottle. "Master and I have been exchanging letters. There's no need for you to pass along any messages. This bottle has a new medicine that I made. Every time that a disciple leaves the valley, they must develop a new medicine, otherwise, Master will definitely believe that they got lazy and punish them. I figure that you haven't had much time to develop any new medicines while in Eastern Ling, right?" Kuan Wushong smiled foolishly. "Little senior disciple really treats me the best. What sort of medicine is this?" He opened the bottle and sniffed it. The smell was extremely strange, and he was unable to tell what it contained. It was made using herbs from Eastern Ling. It's natural that you can't tell what it is. It contains rose mallow, and it invigorates the mind and spirit. It is exceptional. What? Invigorates the mind and spirit? Kuan Wushong immediately let out a strange cry. "I am studying poisons in Immortals Valley. If I give Master a medicine that invigorates the mind and spirit, are you sure that he won't beat me to death?" Yu Fu rolled her eyes at him. "Do as you like." She turned her head to look at Jiyu Shubai, then dragged Kuan Wushong off to the side to speak. "Was it really Yin Shuo who asked you for the poison?" "It was." "What poison did he want?" "Something hypertoxic that even you can't treat." "Ha!" Yu Fu gently laughed. A poison that she could not treat, how could one be so easy to find? "Then why did you give him one that wasn't?" "I don't dare kill Jiyu Shubai." Yu Fu looked at him seriously. For the first time, she felt that the carefree Kuan Wushong had done something proper. "It's good as long as you know. Even if you managed to steal military secrets from Marquis Gu's manor, Emperor Ning would not care, and the head general would care even less. But if eldest brother died at your hands, they would not let you return to Western Kuan alive." Kuan Wushong smiled but did not speak. He was not afraid of Emperor Ning or Jiyu Huijiang. He was just worried that Yu Fu would be sad if Jiyu Shubai died. The two chatted for a while, then walked back. Jiyu Shubai cupped his hands toward Kuan Wushong. "Regardless of your motive, I, Jiyu Shubai, will accept Seventh Prince's kindness." Kuan Wushong did not respond with a kind look. "Even if it was kindness, it was for my little senior disciple. It has nothing to do with you." He climbed into the carriage and suddenly turned around. "But if you really want to repay this kindness, I would not mind. You just need to promise me that you will take care of her like a true older brother." He heavily emphasized the three words "true older brother." Jiyu Shubai smiled and picked Yu Fu up around her waist to get back up on the horse. Provocatively looking at Kuan Wushong, he said, "Don't worry." Kuan Wushong's eyes were on the verge of shooting out flames. How could he feel at ease with this? Snow was falling heavily, and there was a carriage covered in a light blue taupe parked outside the Prime Minister's manor. Yin Yang removed his gold and purple hat, leaving just a hairpin. His purplish-red government uniform had also been swapped out for a plain cotton robe. People relied on clothes the same way that horses relied on saddles. Now that Yin Yang was dressed so plainly, he looked no different from the other old men in the city. Who could possibly imagine that such a Yin Yang had previously been the prestigious Prime Minister? Yin Shuo and Yin Jiao sent him off. The steady son was able to contain himself, but the daughter was already hoarse from crying. "Father, can you really not wait until spring arrives before leaving? It's so cold outside, and the ground is still frozen. How can eldest brother and I feel at ease with knowing that you have returned to the old home in the Minute province alone?" Yin Shuo also said, "Although it is the old home, Our Yin family has been serving as court officials for many generations. The old home would have been abandoned for a long time. If father leaves in such a rush, I fear that the old home would not have the time to tidy up properly. Yin Yang waved his hand, telling them that there was no need to continue. I must leave quickly. His Majesty favors Marquis Gu's manor a great deal, and Jiyu Shubai nearly died. I only resigned to apologize for my crime, but there are quite a few senior officials in court who have resentments toward me and are very dissatisfied. If I don't quickly leave and anger His Majesty, it would not be good for the two of you. He raised his head and looked around. A cold snowflake snuck under his collar and landed on his neck, causing him to shiver. However, he slowly began to laugh. His Majesty's anger will only be reduced by hearing that it was such a cold day and that it was snowing so heavily. Do you two understand? The siblings silently nodded. Yin Yang had always been strict. Who knew that he was thinking about the two of them at such a critical moment? Yin Shuo said, Father, don't worry. When I establish myself in court and things calm down, I will definitely arrange for father to be brought back from the Minute Province. Yin Yang looked at him warmly. This son of his had always made him proud, and there was nothing that would make him feel uneasy. The one that made him feel uneasy was Yin Jiao. For your mother's grave, father has already ordered for someone to erect a nameless monument. In the future, there won't be any need to worry about being unable to find it after a heavy snowfall. But her identity must remain hidden from all outsiders. You must not let it slip. Do you understand? Her mother's grave would be unnamed, and there was no spirit tablet at home. Not even her name could be discovered by outsiders. Having a nameless grave was also good, for it was better than nothing. Hot tears welled up in Yin Jiao's eyes. Many thanks, father. Daughter understands. Daughter definitely will not let anyone else know. Yin Yang nodded his head, then turned to Yin Shuo. You need to take good care of Jiao. When father is not at the manor, you two will need to rely on each other. Father will only be able to feel at ease if you two siblings are united. Yin Shuo bowed and replied, Father, do not worry. Son will definitely take good care of Jiao and calm the situation in court. I definitely will not allow father's departure be in vain. The heavy snow continued to fall, and the carriage slowly departed, leaving a thin trail in the snow. In Yin Yang's life, this was the first time that he had been in such a small carriage. He shrank down inside the carriage and slowly closed his eyes. He was squeezed into the carriage with his clothes and rations. Behind the carriage, Yin Shuo and Yin Jiao were kneeling to send him off, only standing up after a long time. Your Majesty has made a decree. The son of former Prime Minister Yin Yang, Yin Shuo, is to succeed the position of Prime Minister. You will assist us and lead the court. All officials must work together to fulfill their duties, and negligence will not be tolerated. That's all. The spot of Prime Minister was granted, and the officials were all shocked. They initially thought that they would be able to see what His Majesty thought of the eldest prince and the second prince through this decree. Who knew that His Majesty would not choose anyone that had been recommended. Instead, he chose to grant the position to Yin Shuo directly. He was only 21 years of age, which made him the youngest prime minister in Eastern Ling's history. It was truly shocking. But thinking about it carefully, he had already received training from His Majesty in court affairs, and Yin Yang was his father. When it came to a prime minister's work, Yin Shuo could not be more familiar. Moreover, this person was thorough in his work, and he was popular in court. He was not as harsh or demanding as Yin Yang, thus he was suited to the position of prime minister. After court was dismissed, the eldest prince and the second prince had ugly looks on their faces. It was fortunate that His Majesty did not choose one of the people that they had recommended or one that the other had recommended. One of the officials moved to the eldest prince's side and quietly consoled him, Eldest prince, don't worry. His Majesty had planned to have eldest young Sir Yin succeed Prime Minister Yin's position. It's not that he did not want to hear your recommendation. The eldest prince faintly smiled but declined to respond. The official did not understand. The eldest prince also could not say anything. Imperial consort Xian had called him to Qinghua Palace the day before and told him what His Majesty had told her. Mother and son sat face to face in silence. It was as though there was heavy snow falling in their hearts. It was ice-cold and blindingly white. Ning Yijiao, it turned out that his name made it clear from the start that he never had a chance. Even if he put in years of hard work and effort, he had no chance of changing His Majesty's mind. At this time, could it be that he would need to tell the officials who had supported him that His Majesty had already made up his mind and would be naming the second prince as crown prince? Even if he did not say it, the officials would find out sooner or later. Unless... The eldest prince raised his head and looked over to the other side, and the second prince also looked at him, giving him an unhappy look and leaving with a flick of his sleeves. That expression, could it be that he still did not know His Majesty's plan? That was also true. His Majesty had not yet announced it to the court. He had only revealed it to Imperial consort Xian. Recently, the court had been busy with the task of filling the Prime Minister's position. It was natural that they needed to wait until the situation calmed down to bring up this matter. He suddenly smiled. Or perhaps, this would be his final chance. After Yin Shuo took over the position of Prime Minister, his first order of business was to visit Marquis Gu's manor and apologize. My aging father is old and muddled, which led him to do something like make an attempt on the life of the eldest young sir. He personally confessed this, and His Majesty has handled it. Although my father has already resigned and returned to the Minute province, the guilt is not so easily cleared. The son is responsible for their father's crimes. This is perfectly aligned with the heavenly principles. It's a given that I, as the son of the guilty, should come and apologize. He confessed to Yin Yang's guilt without concealing anything and came to kneel outside Marquis Gu's manor to apologize without showing any concern for his status as Eastern Ling's prime minister. Emperor Ning and the officials in court were quite moved, and any trace of suspicion toward Yin Shuo that carried over from Yin Yang's case had instantly vanished. It was not just them, as even Jiyu Huijiang was extremely shocked by Yin Shuo's words. This person is by no means average, knowing when to stand tall and when to bow down. With Yin Yang having been forced to resign from his position, I fear that he will focus even more on establishing himself. It really is hard to imagine. Jiyu Shubai furrowed his brow. He thought about how Yin Shuo was kneeling outside to apologize, which meant that he would need to go outside, feign ignorance, and help him up with a smile. He remembered what was important and said, "The previous Prime Minister is the previous Prime Minister, and you are you. The guilt is not shared. I hope that General and Prime Minister will be able to reconcile in the future for the sake of the prosperity of Eastern Ling and its people. The guilt is not shared." His, Yin Shuo's, guilt was improperly attributed to Yin Yang. However, Jiyu Huijiang told him that Eastern Ling's general and prime minister working in harmony was of the utmost importance. Before there was conclusive evidence, they could not voice their suspicions of Yin Shuo. He reached out and helped him up from the ground, and the two shook hands briefly before kindly letting go. Outsiders talked about how responsible Yin Shuo was. This was clearly a crime committed by his father, yet he did not try to hide from it and actually took the initiative to bring it up. They also spoke of how magnanimous Marquis Gu's manner was. The heir was nearly assassinated, yet they did not hold any grudges and worked with the Prime Minister's manor to improve their relationship. The Prime Minister and General were now united, and Eastern Ling would become even more prosperous. Nobody knew just how estranged they were when they shook hands. After that, the way that they looked at each other, it was as if they were separated by a vast river. Yin Shuo cupped his hands and bid farewell, a cold light flickering in his eyes when he turned around. Jiyu Shubai already knew. Jiyu Shubai watched him climb into his carriage and leave, and his smile slowly began to fade. Turning around, He walked back toward the manor. Yin Shuo knew that he already knew. With a new prime minister appointed, the turbulent atmosphere in court that everyone had expected was almost non-existent. Yin Shuo was a kind and amiable person but acted swiftly and resolutely in handling court affairs. He was able to establish himself in this position very quickly, which earned him repeated praise from Emperor Ning. Even all of the bad practices that had been around while Yin Yang was in this position were being uncovered and taken care of. The general and prime minister were getting along, and all of the officials, civil and military, were satisfied. The atmosphere in court was at an all-time high. Chengji, we did not choose the person that you recommended to become prime minister. Do you have any complaints for us? After the arrival of spring, the weather started to get warmer. The second prince had been called into the palace and accompanied Emperor Ning on a stroll. This year's winter had multiple heavy snowfalls, and Emperor Ning felt a sudden cold. The imperial physicians advised him to go out and take a walk while it was clear out. It would be good for his health. The second prince respectfully followed behind him. What sort of thing is Father Emperor saying? Son would not dare to have any complaints about Father Emperor's decisions. Emperor Ning remained silent, and the second prince thought to himself that this was not good. He must have heard some rumors to ask him such a thing. He hurriedly took a couple of steps forward. When Sun heard that Father Emperor wanted Yin Shuo to succeed the position of Prime Minister, there was indeed some unhappiness, but Sun was not complaining about Father Emperor. Instead, I felt that the previous Prime Minister's guilt was too much. No matter how much Father Emperor favors his son, wouldn't Uncle Jiyu feel quite hurt? In the end, our Eastern Ling should rely more on Marquis Gu's manner. Emperor Ning slowed his pace before stopping and looking at him. Only after a while did he reveal a smile. On this, there's no need for you to worry. For something as important as the Prime Minister's position, it's natural that I asked for your Uncle Gu's thoughts. For you to have such apprehensions is a show of filial piety. Why not tell us directly? If you don't say anything, others will try and sow discord between us, and it made us think that you resented us. The second prince felt a chill in his heart. Who was it that tried to sow discord between us? As a prince, there are plenty of people with their eyes on you. You can't blame others for trying to sow discord. If you wish to blame someone, blame yourself for showing any resentment. Emperor Ning did not say it openly, but the second prince could guess who it was without even thinking. Aside from the eldest prince and his faction, who else would try and sow discord between him and Emperor Ning? He hastily cupped his hands and said, yes, Sun will learn from Father Emperor's teaching. Sun did not come directly to Father Emperor because Sun was also uncertain, fearing that Father Emperor would laugh at my foolishness. It has been many years since Mother Empress passed away, and Sun's manor is away from the palace, thus there is not much reason to come into the palace. I am also unlike my brother, the eldest prince, who has his imperial consort mother in the palace to visit from time to time. Emperor Ning furrowed his brow. Nonsense. Your mother empress is no longer here, but your father emperor is still here. What? Would others dare to say anything if you came to visit your father emperor from time to time? The second prince lowered his head and fell silent. Emperor Ning changed his tone. Forget it. What you said is not wrong. An adult prince who frequently visits the palace and stays with us will inevitably invite wild speculation from outsiders. But you must know that it's because your and Danyang's mother empress is no longer around that we dote on you too a little more. That we did not promote a second empress after all of these years, you should understand the reason. He dotingly patted the second prince's hand, and the second prince raised his head, looking at him in shock. Where is the princess? The second prince strode into the western palace. He was surrounded in such a joyous aura that even the palace maids could tell. Immediately after setting foot inside the palace, he began looking for Princess Danyang. It looked like he had some good news to tell her. One of her personal maids, Tiana said, replying to second prince, "Princess is in the inner room. Please have some tea, while this servant goes to report. Go quickly. Tell Danyang that I have some good news to share." The second prince clenched his fist with emotion. He placed his hands on the table and left some damp spots on the light yellow covering. It was only then that he realized that he was so nervous that his palms were sweaty. Tiana brought out a cup of tea and noticed the wet patches left by his palms. Her mouth opened slightly in shock, as she quietly retreated from the room. What sort of joyous event had just occurred? She had served at Princess Danyang's side for many years, thus she had a decent understanding of the second prince, yet she had never seen him so flustered before. "Second brother, what sort of good news could make you so excited?" With the sound of the bead curtains, Princess Danyang lazily walked out. Her hair was down, and she looked as if she had just woken up. Father Emperor handed the position of Prime Minister to Yin Shuo, and second brother does not have much of a relationship with him. This isn't anything good. Could it be that second brother has some method to get along with this new Prime Minister? The second prince mockingly laughed. Who cares who holds the position of Prime Minister? Even if Yin Shuo was part of Yi Zhao's faction, this prince does not care. Princess Danyang looked at him seriously and suddenly had a strange feeling. She pushed the second prince's hand and found that his palms were wet with sweat. What exactly is this good news? Second brother, quickly tell me. The second prince looked around, and Tiana understandingly waved her hand, leading the palace maids and eunuchs out of the room. The doors were closed, and Princess Danyang looked at him expectantly. He smiled and said, "The wish that you and I have had for many years has finally been realized. None of our efforts were wasted. It was only today that I realized that there's no point in competing with Yi Zhao for the support of the court's officials. The most important person is still Father Emperor." Princess Danyang was both shocked and joyous. "Father Emperor wants to appoint you as the crown prince." "He still has not for the time being, but it should be soon." The second prince cheerfully picked up his cup of tea and gently blew away some of the bubbles at the surface of the tea. "Father Emperor called me into the palace today and asked me to accompany him on a walk around the palace. As we walked, we arrived at Mother Empress' former palace. Take a guess, what do you think Father Emperor said to me?" What did he say? He said that we did not promote a second empress after all of these years. You should understand the reason. Princess Danyang furrowed her brow, not knowing what these words meant. The second prince said, "Danyang, do you still not understand? Imperial consort Xian has been managing the inner palace on Mother Empress' behalf all of these years, pretending to be virtuous and benevolent. If Father Emperor wanted to appoint Ning Yizhao as the crown prince, he would have appointed her as the empress. That would be the proper way of doing things. But Father Emperor never did it, and Imperial consort Xian remains an imperial consort. She could not become the empress and will never end up the empress dowager." Princess Danyang seemed to have reached a revelation and joyously grabbed his hand. "Since Father Emperor revealed his intentions to you, has he told you when he plans to prepare the crown prince's palace?" The second prince smiled. "There's no rush. The court just had a new prime minister appointed, and the situation in court is unstable. It will be a bit longer before Father Emperor can begin preparing the crown prince's palace. When the situation starts to calm down, how much longer would it take to prepare the crown prince's palace?" Princess Danyang hugged his arm and cheerfully said, "I knew it. Second brother is the son that Mother Empress gave birth to, thus the crown prince's position would definitely belong to you." Just looking at the names, it was immediately clear. Father Emperor chose the name Chengji for you. With the blessing of the heavens, provide peace and prosperity for the country. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? The second prince patted her head. He showed some rare kindness to his younger sister from the same mother. Mother Empress is no longer around. We siblings have relied on each other for survival for many years. Now, we've finally made it. But we can't tell anyone about this for now to keep Ning Yizhao's faction from finding out and causing trouble." "I understand. Second brother, I will be going out of the palace. Tiana, quickly prepare this princess's clothes. Princess Danyang immediately wanted to run into the inner room but was grabbed by the second prince. What are you going out at a time like this for? I am going to look for Brother Shubai. The second prince furrowed his brow. I only just said that you can't tell anyone. Have you put any consideration into my words? All you think about all day is Brother Shubai this, Brother Shubai that. Have you already forgotten that your Brother Shubai was almost engaged to another girl? Thinking a little, he chose not to say the most hurtful last part. Princess Danyang's eyes were filled with joy. Second brother, when did you become so overly cautious? Could it be that you've forgotten that Father Emperor would definitely have sought out Marquis Gu prior to making as big a decision as appointing a crown prince? Brother Shubai probably already knows about it. After saying this, she rushed into the inner room. The second prince just listened to her tell the palace maids to look for clothes and a hairpin. What she said was indeed true. Emperor Ning even asked Jiu Huijiang when it came to something like appointing a new prime minister, much less something like appointing a crown prince. Marquis Gu's manor had always maintained a neutral stance, neither supporting him nor the eldest prince. There was nothing for him to feel uneasy about. He flicked his sleeve and left the Western Palace. Behind a tall column nearby, someone dressed like a palace maid clearly heard the second prince's conversation. She looked around and saw that there were no others nearby. Turning around and leaving the Western Palace, she walked toward the inner palace. The situation in court was trending towards being stable, and Marquis Gu's manor was also able to relax a great deal. Jiu Huijiang had less work, and Jiu Shubai had much more free time, thus he would go and visit Yu Fu every day in the Western Wing. Today, just after setting foot in the Western Wing, he felt that the atmosphere was a little off. It felt a little too quiet. He walked through the middle of the courtyard. The maidservant who came to greet him looked a little familiar and bowed very happily upon seeing him. Eldest young sir, you've come? Jiu Shubai hesitated for a moment. Yarrow Hong? Qi Ting's expression became a little ugly, replying to eldest young sir, Auntie Li has already decided to return my original name. This servant is Qi Ting. This was true. She was now a maidservant who handled physical labor, while Yarolan was Yu Fu's personal maidservant. It would not be fitting for the two to share a name. Jiu Shubai nodded his head and headed straight toward the room. Originally, Qi Ting had been quite happy to have been able to regain her original name. At the very least, when they heard her name, they would think of giving Qi An and Qi Ju a bit of face, thus they would not treat her too poorly. But based on Jiu Shubai's earlier expression, it seemed that he was saying that she was not worthy of sharing Yarolan's name. This made her feel humiliated. It was all Yu Fu's fault. If not for her, how could these young sirs who had previously treated her so politely now ignore her? She resentfully snorted and absent-mindedly walked forward. Suddenly, she tripped into a puddle on the ground. With this splash, the maidservants working nearby looked over and began to laugh. Granny Liu walked over with her hands on her hips. I say, Qi Ting, how can you be so stupid? This puddle has been there for so many days, and everyone else has been able to avoid it. You're the only one to fall into it. She loathingly waved her finger in front of her nose. Why haven't you quickly gone to get changed to return to work? Are you wanting to slack off? Qi Ting's face turned red from the humiliation. Bowing, she retreated and heard Granny Liu sarcastically lament, every time that the young sirs come, she just tries to be seductive. She doesn't even look at herself. How could the young sirs be willing to look at her? Why is it so quiet today? What are you looking at? Yu Fu sat in the rear corridor while holding Pang Ju in her lap and a letter in her hand. The room was quiet, and Jiu Shubai entered without making a sound, which gave her a fright. Eldest brother, why did you sneak in so quietly? My martial ability is not as good as everyone else's, so I couldn't hear your footsteps. Jiu Shubai looked around. Strange, where are all of this room's maidservants? Just as he said this, someone responded from the inner room, Eldest young sir, please wait a moment. I will bring the tea out shortly. It was Yarolan's voice. Yu Fu patted the spot next to her, gesturing for him to sit down. Head General said that he wanted to have some new accessories made and told me to pick what I like. He would then pass along the designs to the craftsman. I was thinking about what sorts of hairstyles I have and matching the accessories to them. All of these things are taken care of by Lian Zhu, so I just left it to her to take a look. The two younger ones, Yin Ling and Yin Shui, said that they wanted to go too, and I have no clue where Lian Bai went, which leaves Yarolan on her own. Yarolan came out with a cup of tea. Young Miss was reading a letter in the rear corridor, and I noticed that young Miss had not touched her medicine kit in a while. I went to tidy it up and did not notice eldest young sir come in. Jiyu Shubai received the tea. Who is the letter from? Yu Fu handed the letter to him. Here. Kuan Wushong left a letter to me at the post house. Before he left, he could not find me, and he did not think that we would leave the city to chase after him. This letter was sent, and Yarolan forgot about it, only remembering to give it to me today. Yarolan stuck out her tongue and said somewhat guiltily, the medicine kit still hasn't been fully tidied. If young Miss and eldest young sir need anything, just call me. After saying this, she immediately ducked into the inner room. Jiyu Shubai looked at the letter. It was nothing more than a standard parting letter. At most, it reminded Yu Fu to be careful of Jiyu Shubai. Jiyu Shubai is already 21 years old, and you are only 13 years old. When you get a little older, he will no longer be the most attractive man in linen. Little senior disciple, do not be so hasty. Wait until you become of age before deciding anything. You must not be deceived by that old man. The corner of Jiyu Shubai's mouth twitched. This was the first time that he had been described as an old man. Kuan Wushong seemed to be a year younger. This really was the pot calling the kettle black. Yu Fu could tell what part he was reading based on his expression. Covering her mouth, she laughed off to the side. Men understand men the best. A little girl like you would not understand. You absolutely must take care of yourself and don't let him do anything sneaky. The more someone acts dignified, the more beastly they actually are. Based on this, someone, like him, who looked like a beast was actually a good person. Jiyu Shubai had grounds to support his views and was about to tell Yu Fu that there was no need to read such nonsense, but he was suddenly drawn to the last part of the letter. In truth, when Yin Shuo came to me for the poison, I had wanted to kill Jiyu Shubai. The reason that I did not hand over the hypertoxic poison is that I was worried that you would be sad. But there's no need to thank me. As a prince of Western Kuan, it's possible that I am destined to do some things that will make you sad. Destined to do some things that would make Yu Fu sad. He carefully thought over these words, not understanding what they fully meant. He then looked at Yu Fu, and the latter shook her head. I was deep in thought earlier precisely because of these words. The thing that Kuan Wushong would do, what exactly would it be? Before Jiyu Shubai could think about it carefully, he suddenly heard someone report, "Eldest young sir, Princess Danyang has come and is currently waiting for you in the main hall." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.